Welcome everyone to Comics from the Multiverse, episode 276. I am Peter, and we have a full house this week. Matt is here.
Hey, what's up?
And Matt's big enough to fill the house, so the house is full. Thank you for joining us, everyone, and we'll get on with the show.
People say I have a big personality.
It matches the big head and everything else.
Yeah.
That was very brave.
I don't know. I feel like I need to crack a joke, and I don't know where else to go with it. Connor's also here, I suppose. I should mention his presence.
You should. My presence is always felt. Even when it's not here, the lack of it is felt.
Sometimes it's like a demon where you don't want it there, but it's stuck here.
Just can't get rid of it.
Yeah, I mean, don't worry. I will often crack jokes at your expense, even when you're not here, just to make sure that the aura remains.
I assumed as much.
Yes.
Just pretend I'm still here and just like, well, the presence is there.
But yes. This is a DC Comics podcast. We get together, we've read a bunch of DC Comics, and we talk about them. It's really quite that simple. Coming up on this week's show, it's actually the biggest list of books we've had on an episode in quite some time. Today, we will be talking about Batman 115, Nightwing 85, Catwoman 36, Batman Secret Files Peacekeeper Issue 1. Sorry, Peacekeeper 1 Issue 1, just to say it properly. The Flash 775, Superman Son of Kal-El Issue 4, Green Lantern 7, Catwoman Lonely City Issue 1, Batman Catwoman Issue 8, Refrigerator Full of Heads Issue 1, and Connor's got a Patreon book to tackle with Undiscovered Country Issue 14. So, yeah, hefty week.
Short week for reading. Very busy week. I'm surprised I got what I read.
Yeah, I mean, I read 9 books, 3 of which were oversized, and that was, and I feel quite happy about that. But that was still cutting. Like I didn't read Peacekeeper 1. That was like a Matt only read, that book, and I like. When I read Black Manta issue 1 last month, I said, "Oh, I'll probably try and read issue 2 if it's not in a busy week." Well,
busy week, yeah.
Busy week, very busy week.
I intended to get caught up on that one too, but then I saw the amount of books, and recording a day earlier meant I had one less day.
I mean, ultimately, it came down to like, I'm sure Peacekeeper 1 was probably fine. You'll tell us about it later, but it was like that or the Catwoman Black Label book, which just seemed more of an interesting number one to try.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple of things I intended to read but didn't. Then I realized I haven't read any of the books from last week, and I had to at least read the Fear State tie-in Gotham Urban Nights. Whatever that
you could have asked.
Didn't think about that, did I? I just thought, oh yeah, Fear State tie-in. I best read it. That was a waste of 20 minutes.
To be fair, I did kind of like how the last story sort of became a Fear State tie-in, because it started off in the future, and I felt betrayed at first, and then it kind of time traveled into being a Fear State tie-in.
Yeah, I don't think it's bad as an issue, but as tie-ins
I mean, you definitely,
go,
me saying you could have asked isn't indicative of the quality. It's the indicative of the length of that book, and you could have read another 2 other books instead. And
then it turns out I opened up Superman Son of Kal-El issue 4, read the first page, and was like, I didn't read issue 3. Like, shit. I just, as soon as I opened it up, I was like, God damn it. So that's another book I need to go back and read.
Good stuff.
Dang.
So yeah, lots of books to get through this week, which is why I'm glad that if you didn't check it out, me and Connor did like a bonus extra episode, which I told you about we were going to do last week, but just in case you missed it, there was an extra hour or so episode just about DC fandom news with me and Connor. Now, admittedly, only a tiny bit of it was actually comic book related, but still, maybe of interest, and it means that we don't have to spend like an hour talking about fandom on this episode, which is good news.
I mean, if we'd had to, we could have cut it down, but...
we probably wouldn't have went as in-depth as we did, because it was a separate thing, and there was no reason to hold back, but...
Yeah.
You know. So, hey-ho, that's good stuff. But have no fear, there's always time for everyone's favourite segment of the show.
What about that?
Hey. There'll be top...
You got me last week, too.
It's been a while.
Top 10s live tonight.
It's been like a month since I've had to hear one. God damn it.
Top 10s left tonight. 40 years ago! Top 10s left tonight.
Oh, is that how long you've been doing top 10s for? It feels like it.
No, I'm just, if no one's getting my reference, I'm making fun of Halloween Kills, and it was pointed out, I watched the Red Letter Media review today, and they made a lot of the same points that I made when I tore it to shreds on the 2.5-hour episode of Screams After Midnight. But one thing that they also pointed out that I hadn't really realised was how often in the movie someone mentions the fact that it's been 40 years since the first night. And it's like, oh shit, yeah, they do say that like every 5 minutes. Over and over.
It's so weird that they did that this time and not in the 2018 one, which was closer, right, to 40 years.
I feel like I like it a little bit more than you two both did, judging from Twitter, and I know from talking to Pete last week before I had seen it, and whatnot. However, my rewatching them, my big problem with the 2018 Halloween is that no one seems to recognize Michael Myers walking around Haddonfield, right? Like, and yet they're doing a true crime podcast about it. Yet jump to Halloween Kills, and there's a mob of people actively searching for him when he was just running out there.
I mean, I have way bigger problems with Halloween 2018. But I mean, on this particular point, I would also say that in the first movie, and by first movie I mean 2018. Do you know what? See, when I was doing the streams review, every time I said the first movie, I had to specify what I meant.
Because technically, this is 3, right? Which I didn't realize until I had watched it a second time this week on Peacock, just to really rub salt in that wound. And the amount of Silver Shamrock masks I get an extra kick out of now.
Oh sure, yeah. I mean, that's the problem. Is the movie's all nostalgia. It's all referencing moments from the original. There's nothing new added.
Aren't so bad though.
No, that one's fine. But like, that's all the movie is. It's all just, hey, remember this moment with the hand in the glass, blah blah blah. Anyway, on Matt's point, in the first movie, a character actually points out that given all the things that happen in the world today, someone knifing 3 people 40 years ago isn't, relatively speaking, that big of a deal. Cut to the next movie, evil dies tonight! Evil dies tonight! Evil dies tonight!
Let's kill a lot more than 3 after this.
I know the body count in this one is... it's just another example
of the highest body count of any Halloween movie.
I mean, everything has to be bigger with modern movies. That's the problem, is that there's no, like... Everything, there has to be 40 kills now, because... 3's not enough.
I described it as it's the part in Death of Superman where Doomsday is just heading towards Metropolis and just laying waste to everything. So, yeah.
Yes.
You got to think it outside of maybe Zombies Halloween, that probably does have the highest body count, right?
I think it's higher than those. So I just watched those. They're bloody terrible movies. Don't get me wrong, and there's definitely, obviously, there's deaths in them, but I don't think there's actually that many. They're just very extreme.
Yeah, I mean, the Rob Zombie movies are still worse than Halloween Kills, but Halloween Kills is a train wreck in almost every level.
Real quick, okay. Curse of Michael Myers or Halloween Kills?
Oh.
Wait, which one's Curse? Remind me.
That's 6. That's Paul Rudd.
Oh, that one. I had more fun with that.
I think I actually get more of a morbid curiosity out of Halloween 6 than Kills.
Okay.
If nothing else, just because it's got such a weird, like, convoluted production, and there's 2 cuts that, if you watch both cuts, you can sort of see how they just, like, how certain scenes were just completely rearranged to, like, into a new
they
format.
Added the whole Man in Black character, right?
I mean, I hate the plot of 6. I hate the cult. I hate all these reasons given to make. I hate so much of that movie. It's terrible.
So, but I listened to a show this week real quick about Halloween 4 that Carpenter wanted to do after the Silver Shamrock, story. Have you guys heard about this?
Maybe, depends what it is.
Yeah.
So in this one, it jumps to 10 years after the events of the first film, and it focuses on Tommy Doyle and Lindsay Wallace, and about how Haddonfield is now banned Halloween, and that the neighboring town is going to have like a Halloween movie marathon at the drive-in, and Haddonfield trying to get it shut down because they don't want to attract the bad vibes from that night 10 years before. But someone in the shape returns, but is it the shape? It's kind of doing a Friday the 13th 5 kind of thing where you don't get a good look at it, and then at the end it ends up being Michael Myers, but as the town grows more afraid, he grows into the size of a kaiju, and they end up having to blow up cars at the drive-in to defeat him. I wish I was making this up.
That would have been more inspired from an idea perspective than Halloween Kills is.
John Carpenter okayed this.
I mean, not necessarily good.
Like, I don't think he cares anymore.
No. This was in the 80s, Connor.
John Carpenter has some great quotes about how every time a Halloween sequel is made, it's terrible and you've seen them and most of them suck, but every time they make one, I put out my hand and magically a check appears in it, and it's,
Because I go, how do you feel about this, in Halloween? He goes, well, I just stick out my hand and a check materializes and I get over it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I recommend the Screams After Midnight episode of Halloween Kills because we dissect the shit out of that movie. Yep. All I will say, just to sum up some overall thoughts here, is that
Evil Dies Tonight.
Is that Halloween 2 is a better hospital set Halloween movie than Halloween Kills. Halloween 4 is a better, he returns to the town and there's an angry crowd of people.
Significantly better.
Better version of that than Halloween 6. And Halloween H2O is a better version of an older Laurie who's struggling with the trauma of what happened to her youth kind of thing, right?
Laurie's actually in H2O, so,
and also when she's in H2O, she's not monologuing about evil transcending and bullshit like that.
But Pete, evil dies tonight.
Yeah.
What? The worst part of that is that it's not even like one character says it and it spreads from them. A character says it early in the movie, and then a completely separate character who never heard her say that says it like separately. I hate it. I hate all of
it. Yeah. As a Friday the 13th fan, I can shut it off and just enjoy the completely brutal, overly brutal killings in this one. So. I felt it more I was watching Jason than Michael. So, in a
lot of ways, yes, and that's part of the problem.
That's part of the problem, right? Like, they're distinct characters, and so... Anyway, the more Pete talks, the more he transcends. So we gotta stop him.
Although that said, I am kind of down for a kind of satirical Halloween movie where it's just Jim Cummings versus Michael Myers for the entire 90 minutes. I will happily watch that.
So rewatching it, man, Jim Cummings is so good in his,
I think he's completely out of place in that. Because as soon as he starts talking, I expect there to be laughs. I expect there to be like jokes that pay off because the way he speaks is such a build up to a deadpan joke, right? It's just the way he speaks. Well, that's
because you're used to him from Thunder Road and Wolf of Snow Hollow, right? So where he also both plays cops.
Yes, he's playing the exact same character.
Any of those, I didn't have the same problem with the association.
I like him in this one because it subverts that, as he's just playing a cop.
Yeah, I say that I love those two movies, and I think he's great. I think he's perfect as that character. I don't think it works in a Halloween movie, especially one that's trying to take itself so dead serious as this one is. But hey,
Connor, watch Wolf of Snow Hollow. It was one of my favorite movies of last year.
I've been meaning to. It's on the list,
and it's just kind of October suitable.
You get away with it. I mean, it does center around maybe a werewolf, and that's.
I feel like it fits more than half the shit you watched, Matt.
I watched some. No, when I was in quarantine, I watched almost exclusively horror movies. Thank you.
There was a couple of questionable picks on your horror list. Like, it's one thing to have one or two throughout the month that's kind of like, this one's more of a kid's horror movie, so it's fine. But you had like 2 or 3 back to back that were questionable. It was like My Cousin Dates a Vampire or some shit like that.
One Half a Day with a Vampire. That's a Disney Channel original movie.
That makes it so much better.
Yeah, it's not good. But when the wife wants to watch stuff after you made her watch Slumber Party Massacre, then to watch Mom's Got a Date with a Vampire.
You know what, Matt? There's so much good horror that you've not seen, and yet I feel like you watched the Gallows Act 2 for some reason. Like, you've got so much to discover, and you're watching the Gallows Act 2.
I need to watch The Void 2.
I will never Gallows Act 2, because what a trash movie. Like it's like below trash. Like yeah. I have plenty of time. Horror. I don't only watch horror in October. I started back in September. It's probably gonna be all year. So we're it'll be okay.
Well, you got Christmas horror season to get to in December.
I'm gonna try to keep Shudder and just not tell Ash that so I can finally watch Black Christmas, the original.
Well, yeah, watch original Black Christmas. Watch Silent Night, Deadly Night.
I've seen New Year's Evil. I haven't seen Silent Night, Deadly Night.
I watched that. And I also recommend part 2, but you kind of can't watch them in the same year because like half of part 2 is flashbacks to part 1, so it's kind of awkward to watch them close together. But the half that isn't flashbacks is worth seeing. So that's why it's still a recommendation.
Is it worth seeing because it's good or just wild?
Oh, wild.
Well, that's what I realized. I love slasher movies, and sometimes the worse they are, the more I like them, because I'd rather have something wild like Slumber Party Massacre than something that's just boring like The First Prom Night.
Was it the original Slumber Party Massacre you watched?
Yeah.
Yeah. The second one's even more wild, Matt, believe it or not.
I know, you told me. And so I've been watching, since I have Shudder right now, the History of Horror series. And of course, we watched the slasher one first. And they showed clips from Slumber Party Massacre 2. And I went, Pete was not underselling me. Or overselling me. He somehow undersold me.
It like turns into a weird, demented music video where the killer still uses a power drill, but the power drill is actually the end of a neck of a guitar. It's it's insanity.
And seeing that Timmy liked the remake, I'm gonna have to track that down just to see.
But Tim also liked The Boy, so.
Yeah, I know, but this is the thing with Tim. I don't know if him liking The Boy is a joke or not.
Yeah. Anyways, so there's a scene that you both know from Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2, though, just before we move on. You've all heard, it's garbage day! You've seen that clip.
Yeah.
There you go.
Garbage day.
Yeah, that's Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. Once he gets out of the hospital, or once we start getting scenes of him out of the hospital where he's like trying to like date people and stuff, it's gold. It is absolute gold.
It will definitely be on the to watch list. So, but yeah, I gotta see what's on the docket for tonight. But definitely something good. Hopefully.
All right.
Very ambitious.
So, okay, I mean, it is October. We tangent a bit into horror movies, but there is time for the ComiXology Top 10.
The more he lists, the more he ascends. That's it. Stop that on a shirt.
Oh, dear. So, that's, I mean, guesses for number 1, it is DC.
Batman.
It is Batman. It's funny that.
Shock.
Oh, hey, Batman sells.
Batman 115 at number 1. Number 2 is X-Men: The Trial of Magneto, issue 3.
Oh, dang.
So that's the thing.
That's still going.
It's issue 3 of 5, so I mean, it's not been going that long.
Yeah, they've been speaking about that for so long, I thought it was over.
It's like, that's still going. I'm like, it's issue 3, Carter.
Genuinely, they were talking about that so far in advance that I thought it ended.
Number 3 is another DC book, if anyone would like to guess.
A DC book.
I'd say it's one of two things. Either the Batman Secret Files or Nightwing.
It's Nightwing.
There you go.
Yeah, so Nightwing doing all right. Number 4 is the Critical Role comic book, issue 1. So there you go. Have that. Number 5, we're back to DC with Superman, Son of Kal-El. So that's doing all right too.
Yeah, I heard that those. We didn't really have any news to talk about, right? But heard that 5 pre-sold so well, right, that they are doing second printings of 1 through 4.
Yeah, that's the coming out issue. Yeah, they were saying that its numbers are off the charts.
Yeah.
Thankfully, has a new colorist working on it.
Yeah, more on that when we get to talk about that book, because
sure. Yes. If you occasionally hear a noise that sounds like a ship that's trying, like its rudders like dying, it's Matt's ceiling fan.
It's trying to leave port.
When we do take a break for a second, I could probably try to. It's not that warm today.
Yeah. Well, it's October.
Yeah, but I also live in a city that doesn't recognize seasons, so It's a comfortable 84 here, which in your guys is
real temperature.
Yeah, my watch doesn't do it. But yeah. So anyway, I'll try to get that taken care of.
I bet it's still in the 30s.
28 point.
Oh, it's close to the 30s.
29.
Comfortable, my arse. That's not comfortable. That's hell.
That is literally.
Bro, I almost needed a jacket this morning.
That is literally the hottest this country ever gets in peak summer.
That is hellfire and brimstone. That's what that is.
Never come here when it cracks 3 digits, guys.
Oh, jeez. Don't have to ask me twice. Star Wars: The High Republic issue 10 is number 6. Number 7 is. Oh, yeah.
Pete, you want to try to take a guess what the High Republic actually is?
The look of fear on his face then.
It's a republic of let's say there's a couple of Jedi on the cover. Let's say there's some Jedi Republic of sorts. I don't know.
Is it set before the the Skywalker saga or after?
Or during?
I mean,
that could be too.
It's
probably not that, given that I didn't give him the option. But yes.
I mean, I feel like you saying that's supposed to like mean something to me. Like, oh, there's like a meaning to it if it's before, or a meaning to it if it's after. And all I can think is I don't care or give a shit. So I'll say before.
Okay. Yeah.
Is it before?
Yeah, it's like
a few hundred years.
It's a few centuries before.
I think it's like 200 or 300 years. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, meaningless tie-in fluff. Got it. All right. Number 7 is Batman Catwoman issue 8. So that squeaked out of the top 10. Number 9? No, 8. Yeah, that was number 7. Yeah, number 8 is Thor issue 18. Number 9 is The Flash 775. And then number 10 is actually the final volume of Lock and Key, which is they're all on sale, so they're all kind of like sprinkled out the top 20 or so. So that's neat. But yeah, that's not a bad showing for DC this week. After last week's pretty dire DC representation, this is actually a nice even thing. In fact, they actually beat Marvel quite a bit because there's a couple of non-Big 2 books in there. So 5 books in the top 10, not too bad. And a couple of them, you know, I think Superman, Son of Kal-El, sort of starting to trickle up there a little bit. Flash
got that Tom Taylor rub.
Yeah, and Flash kind of surprises me a little bit, but hey, good for Wally.
Yeah.
So cool.
Surprising.
Yeah. Right after the top 10, it's a bunch of Lock and Key stuff because it's mostly on sale. With a couple of Marvel and other things sprinkled in.
Did you guys realize that Joe Hill was Stephen King's son before, like, when like you just saw his name? Like, were you guys familiar at all with him before?
Well, I knew, but
for as long as I've been aware of who he is.
I mean, I didn't know it the first time I saw his name, but like, it depends when you mean. Yeah. Like, do you mean when they announced him for say?
Lock and Key was like, I remember seeing Lock and Key coming out. It says from Joe Hill, you know, novelist, whatever. But up until recently, like a couple years at this point, I didn't realize he was Stephen King's son. And then I finally saw what he looks like, and there's without a doubt, he's Stephen King's son. Like,
yeah, I probably didn't know he was Stephen King's son when I first saw Lock and Key, like sitting on a shelf, and saw the name. But
so the pen name did work then, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
it depends. Did Pete read Lock and Key before he knew?
No.
It didn't work that well then, did it? Didn't pick it up.
Well, no, but I mean, I'll pick up most people if
true.
I don't know who they are.
Just say that had he not gone with the Hill last name, his name would have been Joe King.
Well,
there's got to be a Joker pseudonym, right?
I mean, I think that's Stephen King's sense of humor, and probably why he wanted a pen name, which was more I don't know,
hilarious,
more normal, less silly. Yeah. So there you go. That's top 10. Good week for DC. So that's the top 10 in ComiXology as of right now at the time of recording, which this week is Friday evening. So there you go. But cool. Now, I didn't find any news, but Connor is desperate to talk about paper. So
Look, paper is a very interesting topic right now. Not exclusively paper. There's crises of all sorts, of course, but there is a paper crisis. That isn't just maybe going to affect comics. It will affect comics. It is affecting comics already. So there are like two parts that have come this week. One's a more general one. One's a bit more specific to the UK. I'll start with that. Diamond UK basically emailed all the stores in the country, kind of saying, yeah, there's been a lot of problems lately with shipping and air freight, whatever, which obviously is a global thing across all industries. We've all seen that. But there are now paper shortages which are causing some problems. And specifically that's causing some packaging problems. Like some companies are not able to bag and board all the higher ratio variants to stop them, because they used to bag and board them before shipping them, because obviously they sell for a lot. So to protect them even more in transit, they would do that before they got to the store. And now they're sending out notices saying, yeah, we can't actually do that anymore because there's a board shortage now because of this. So everyone stock up on your boards, I guess, is what I'm saying, if you want to bag and board your comics.
Yeah. Luckily, my shop does it for us because it just makes for a cleaner presentation.
Well, yeah, but will they for long? Because this is the thing. This is where it's going to affect consumers.
Well, as long as they can keep getting them. I mean, I just know the owner prefers it this way, and then they don't have to bag and board when they're putting stuff in.
My store bags and boards all variants, but just bagged regular covers.
Gotcha.
So it will vary store to store, but that's definitely going to have some impact on some people. And for the UK specifically, Diamond UK basically said, yeah, it's going to be bad. It's going to be rough. Things are not going to come on time at all. We've already had a little bit of that. I mentioned, I think it was last episode I was on with Swamp Thing, where that was delayed by like 2 weeks. So I had to double dip and grab that digitally. Get used to it. Basically, they're saying at least until after Christmas it's going to be like this. So that's rough. And then specifically with the paper shortage, Image put out a statement today saying that from this moment on, including things that are already being ordered, they are not doing any second printings or anything of any books at all. First printings only. There will not be any reprints because they don't have the paper to spare and they need it for the new issues.
I mean, if there's any hits in the next few months, they might become very valuable if there's no second prints.
Yeah, exactly. There will not be reprints, and there will probably be lower print runs as well to accommodate for that. It's usually, obviously, they get all the shops order and they do a little bit extra of a certain percentage to cover things that might come in later. They won't be doing that anymore. It'll be just what is ordered. So I would suggest if you don't have a pull list with your store, may want to set it up because they might not, stores will probably have to cut back on what they're ordering because of this.
And really be clear with what you want too. Like, because if stuff goes, it goes. Like, I still never was able to track down that what was it?
Hellerism, like 5.
Hellerism, there it is.
That was issue 3, I think it was.
Issue 3. So, lesson learned.
Maybe they'll do a thing. A lot of old comics didn't survive because they actually encouraged people to recycle back in the day and whatnot. Maybe they'll do a new thing where everyone should donate their issue 8s of Wonder Woman so they can recycle them for new issues.
Do it. I have 3 of them, so it's fine. One of the biggest comic horror stories I've ever heard was they were renovating a house, like an old, house that was built in like the 1910s. And they had found a completely torn apart Action Comics #1 that they had used for insulation in the walls. And it was like, oh man, these people had no idea the value of something like that would have been. So, yeah, insulation.
Yeah, and it's funny because obviously you have the spectator market, but by the time people realize comics could be worth something, the fact that everyone tries to go out their way to get a hold of them means that the ones that are worth something because no one realized they were going to be worth something.
Right.
So they became very, very valuable. Nothing from the last decade. I mean, yeah, sure, some variants that are whatever might go for like 100 or something, but you know, it's not Action Comics 1. Like, it's not millions.
But
the only things that will even potentially come close to that, and they won't be Action Comics 1. Nothing will ever be Action Comics 1. Let's just cover that. But you know, have real value are things with minuscule print runs, things that are like incredibly indie comics, you know, borderline self-published things that will then get picked up down the line, you know, maybe a decade later and turned into something. Those might get value.
It's whatever people assign value to. I remember when people would come in and when Image was on that hot streak and just buying whatever Image #1 was that week, hoping that it was going to be a hit, like Sex Criminals or whatever else, whatever the big what was that Hickman one, East of West.
East of West. You had a lot of big Image books around that time. East of West, Wicked and Divine. Yeah,
you know, so people would come in and just buy it, and then my shop owner would say they'd never see them again because they were just there to buy the #1s, you know. So, but yeah, paper. This is up there with aspect ratios, stuff that makes me want to take a nap.
Oh, aspect ratios is way more interesting than paper.
This has real world implications for our listeners.
He's true. You have a point on that. It's still just, you know.
I'm pretty sure as well, like, there was a delay to the new Justice League book, the Williamson Justice League Infinite? I don't know, whichever one that is.
Incarnate, I think it is. But
Incarnate, there you go.
Yeah. And I believe part of that is related to printer issues.
Oh, well, okay. Did someone get Dunder Mifflin on the phone? I'm sure they can sort it out.
Oh man, Product Recall was on as I was going to bed last night. Such a good episode.
Which one's that?
That's where they have to go and someone put the watermark, and they have to go back and try to make good. So Jim and Andy go to the high school.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I'm with it.
Creed spends the time getting that lady fired.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, it's an all-timer. So.
All right, I think we're ready to move on, are we?
Yeah.
We can talk about comics now. We've talked about the making
everything
of comics
else
enough. Yeah.
Batman 115. James Tynion IV writing with Begal on art and Jorge Jimenez guesting for like 2 pages.
Yeah.
So get that out of the way first. But yeah, so this is next chapter in Fear State. Kind of more of a downbeat chapter. I think this is one that's more about setting up kind of where we're getting into in the end run. I think the change in artist does unfortunately hurt the mood quite a bit because and it's especially worse because when you get to those Scarecrow pages, which are the pages that Jimenez is doing, and it's like, oh, this is what it's supposed to feel like.
And it hurts because I love Begal. Like, I think absolutely fantastic artist. I really do. And if that was just the look of this Bat book in general, I'd be all in on this.
Yeah, it takes it from a dark and gritty to an almost pulpy.
It's like it's so different and
the mood
cartoonish in comparison to Jimenez, which is what we've had for this arc.
Yeah,
it's the contrast of it that hurts the book, not that the art is bad.
It's just not the right vibe. It feels like someone turned on a light and started vacuuming.
Yeah,
like it's, you know, in terms of the mood.
Yeah, but it does work in like the Ivy scenes because those are so different than what's going on up in the city.
I'm pretty sure Begal did some of the art on the early Batgirl Rebirth book after Albuquerque.
Yeah.
Yeah,
which,
possibly.
You know, like, it suited that book a lot. This not so much.
I mean, I don't think the art's bad typically, but there is 1 or 2 panels of Ivy that I think are a bit rough, where she looks like she's like 6 years old, and it kind of bugged me. So a bit smooth in the face at times for my taste, but yeah. So this is the, if you remember, the end of the last issue was Peacekeeper 1 blowing up Peacekeeper X. So it was this big moment where Scarecrow convinces him to do that because Scarecrow's in his head.
Yep.
So this is Simon saying, reacting to this at the start of the issue, kind of freaking out, saying, well, let's go get his body because his brain still might be kicking, you know, sort of mad scientist stuff. Like, we can still use his brain.
That's very RoboCop.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, hell, the magistrate are very OCP in a lot of ways when you think about it.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. That line reminded me of someone calling ambulance. What is that? The director's cut, Pete?
Well, the line's in both cuts, but in the director's cut, you see there's like an extra 30 seconds of the guy being just torn to shreds with machine gun fire. That it's a funny line. Like in the theatrical cut, it's like a serious line because maybe there's a chance he could be saved. But in the director's cut, he's clearly just a puddle of blood at this point. That it's a funny line. So, yes.
Yeah, go get his brain. I was like, oh man.
Yeah, but then some analyst is like, hey, we've been doing some readings of the city, and we think that Ivy's, got roots under the entire city and could, collapse the whole thing if she wants to. And
worse than No Man's Land.
Worse. I'll admit that line did annoy me a little bit. It was like shoehorning the title. I mean, I'm actually cool with them referencing that time period. I think that's a neat idea, especially if you're trying to describe what happens if the entire city has what will be essentially a massive like quake. But actually forcing the title of the story into the sentence is annoying.
I never felt like they called it No Man's Land. It was just Gotham still, so alternate line maybe something like, since the last time we had a big earthquake, remember what that did to the city? But it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Do you know what? I think what bothers me is it's actually it's one letter. It's the A. See if it was just when Gotham was No Man's Land, I think it would read probably just fine. But when Gotham was a No Man's Land, actually sounds really clunky to me. Because I'm sure it was referenced as a No Man's Land at some point, during
I think it's because it is grammatically correct to say a No Man's Land.
Yeah.
But the fact that we know this was a big event back in the late 90s, early 2000s, it does feel a little bit clunky.
Yeah. I think if he just kind of owned it, and because if he said when Gotham was No Man's Land, it kind of just kind of owns it and says no, people refer to it as No Man's Land, and it would feel more natural.
Right.
And I'm not saying that always works. I hate whenever they say 0 year, I just want to vomit because it's stupid and no one would call it that. But at least that would make more sense. But I don't know. It's like they're trying to have their cake, but also eat it in the sense that. But we don't want to like actually kind of use it as if it was a title. We're kind of pretending it's not a title, and it's almost more insulting because of that.
Right.
But anyway, so Saint's like, we're going to go after Ivy now. We've got a new target. We can bring this city down and take back control with Ivy. And we cut to Ivy, Queen Ivy in particular, with Master Wise, and we get some of Master Wise's backstory about how he kind of started off with the Mad Hatter. That's where some of the tech was developed with.
More on Mad Hatter later.
Yeah,
I find it funny how much he's starting to factor into Fear State.
Oh, sure. We then cut to Peacekeeper 1. This is when we switch back to the Jimenez art. It's him wandering around the sewers. Scarecrow makes his appearance. Scarecrow looks fantastic. I mean, I know we say that. We've been saying that for a lot of this arc. But...
He's so creepy. Like, it's not like scary, but just him standing there so peacefully like that. It's unnerving.
Yeah, it's just really good. There's not really much to it other than that. Hey, you're my tool. You're going to help me, cure this city. And he's kind of manipulating him, playing on his mind. And then just to skip ahead to the later scene, it's basically yes, and I'm going to strap you into this machine, which turns out to be the Batman and Miracle Molly plot that we get to next, which is effectively they're going after the device that Master Wise uses to reboot people's brains, keep the essential skills and that, but reboot their personalities so that they're starting from fresh. It removes
their trauma, as what Miracle Molly says.
Yeah, but the problem with that is that it's also kind of like storing all the data of what their trauma is, which a bit of a flaw in the system.
I don't know. It's the logic of it being the algorithmic learning makes sense, right?
Oh no, I agree. The way she explains it does make sense.
Yeah, but the fact that it's just sitting, all these people's trauma, right, is just sitting there waiting for someone to come and use it for all the wrong reasons. And it's very...
And that's what it becomes. Scarecrow has got a hold of it, and he's going to use it to basically just pump fear and trauma into the city, yeah, via Peacekeeper 1. So, like, all this stuff that it sets up is fine. I think what hurts this issue, in terms of pacing, all on the fact that the art changed, so the mood feels very different, which I think is maybe the biggest thing, but it is a lot of exposition. Like I'm not necessarily against Master Wise having interacted with Mad Hatter a little bit, but throughout those couple of pages, I'm just kind of like, okay, this is fine, but it's not that interesting or exciting. Like, I'm not like super engrossed in it.
I do like it though, because it just shows how Master Wise learned from Mad Hatter about kind of being who you need to be, you know, and that wasn't, you know, what he needed to do. It wasn't that. It was that he wanted to actually help people. So I do like that the whole Unsanity Collective does come from a good place. It's just how they're going about it is a little bit off.
Yeah.
So I do like how it just doubled down on that with him.
And I do like that it clashes with what Mad Hatter, because Mad Hatter's whole thing is that he makes people not who they are. Like, he intentionally turns them into someone else. Mm-hmm. So there's a nice contrast with that.
Yeah.
In fact, that's one of the things is you do get like a panel of Scarecrow with the other art towards the end of the book, when it's kind of like showing you know, various things. It's when Batman and Miracle Molly are talking, and you see how much more plain it looks versus the Jimenez version.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, okay. I mean, there were the right pages to pick. Right? If you're really going to have Jimenez on 3 pages, there were the right ones to pick, but it still kind of hurts. So there's a whole action beat here as well, which just kind of felt inconsequential. Which is the big guy from the Insanity Collective is guarding the machine. He's been toxined by Scarecrow to defend the machine at all costs. And Miracle Molly has a little scene where she jumps up and like deactivates his big gauntlets, which give him effectively, you know, metahuman levels of punching power. And you know, it's just a fine scene. You know,
I did like her cursing at herself for creating something so good. You know, like those gauntlets that she created. She has those are top notch. You know, and now they're causing a problem for her. I did like
Superman
that.
would feel it, and Batman's like, that's not great.
Yeah. So, you know, so the issue ends back at Ivy's lair with the magistrate showing up and her getting pissed off and saying, "No, I knew this was going to happen by letting people in," and Simon Saint yelling, "Bring me her head." So, yeah, it's an okay issue. I think it's probably one of the weakest, if not the weakest, of all of Fear State, because it doesn't like ruin anything, it doesn't, you know, mess anything up. It's just, you know, the art feels like the mood's completely different, and I think most of the book is exposition. It's either exposition of Master Wise and Mad Hatter backstory stuff, and then it's exposition of, oh, this is the machine, let us just explain this more for Batman. And I think because at least a couple of us had read the Miracle Molly one shot, which I think told us what that machine did in a much more interesting way that mattered to the character. So it was far more engrossing to learn through what it was actually giving her, because she was in such a bad place. Having this dump of information from her explaining what it is again just kind of felt like, oh, yeah, okay.
It's kind of frustrating for us as well, because we read that, but it's essential to have that in here as well for people such as Matt,
I didn't
read
I listened to you guys talk about that issue, but you know,
there are definitely lots of people who are just reading Batman and nothing else that need to have that explained to them.
Yeah,
as frustrating as it might be for us.
It's a weird double-edged sword, because I completely get the logic, but it's not only just that I've already learned all of this elsewhere, but I learned it in a much better way. Like the story that was told in that one shot was really good. So having it all kind of brought up here in a vastly inferior, just like, let's catch everyone who's not reading the other things up, it's kind of just awkward and clunky, and just makes that scene kind of boring as it's playing out.
Yeah, it just plays into the worst elements of, you know, crossover events, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we're gonna feel that a lot in some of these that we talk about today. Just that, you know, that's sometimes the price for a big crossover like this.
Yeah, so some handle it better than others, obviously. I think this is just a really unfortunate beat in this story. I mean, it's not a bad issue. I definitely think it's... I'm very lukewarm on it, and it has in no way hurt my excitement for the next issue or the end of the story. It's not negatively impacted anything, but this issue was a little bit... I mean, it feels harsh to say dud, but it definitely feels like a big step down from the rest of the issues.
Yeah, I have to agree. It's not a bad issue. It's an essential issue, but I think it's very telling that this is the fill-in artist, right? This is not. I think it's very clear Tynion wants Jimenez to be the main storyteller on this arc. He wants this to be Jimenez's story just as much as Tynion's, and I guess this issue is like, okay, what can I write that someone else can draw most of that will be like fine, but not not take away from Jimenez being part of this story in a major way.
Yeah. So yeah, not that hot on it, unfortunately. But hey, I'm still excited for the rest of the story, so it's all good in that sense. Matt, what are you giving the main story in Batman?
I'm gonna give it a 6.5.
Connor?
I'm actually going to agree with the 6.5.
I was just going to go with a straight 6, but yeah, we're all in a similar ballpark. Now, I actually read the backup to this.
I'm shocked.
I did as well, because this is the exact team that is doing the backup.
That is why, because I wasn't planning on it, and I got to I always look at the first page of the backup to see what it is, and I saw Batgirls, and I saw the names, and I looked at the art and went, that art looks quite good. And I thought,
I'm surprised you didn't have like a Google alert going that Batgirl's book.
So naturally, I had to check it. I had to see and get a taste of and it's one of those things where we know from, let's say, Nightwing, where the crossover stuff right now is good, but not as good as the actual ongoing book. So it's like, okay, this is a taste of the main book, but presumably the main book could be a bit better because it's not tying into things.
I'm also glad I read it, because I think it was the end of, I want to say it was Nightwing, that was like, hey, check out the Batgirl's backup in, I think it's Batman 116.
Yeah, and that also refers back to the Batwoman story in the Urban Legends book as well at one point. Yeah. So
it was worth me reading that.
Yeah, there was a reference.
There was a reference though, because I read that too, and I don't feel like anything. Outside of someone impersonating.
I'm trying to justify it to myself.
Matt, there was an editor's note saying, "Go see what they're talking about from this story."
No, I understand that, but does it enrich
really
this story anymore? I don't think so.
Is it worth it? I thought he was saying, was it really referencing that, or is it ambiguous?
No. Okay. I meant, was it really like, do you need to? I don't think so.
No, but look, I chose to read that instead of like 2 other books.
Right.
Connor,
I understand what you're doing.
He's clinging to justification. He's trying to cling to some right
and
reason.
If you're trying to feel better about something, it's mine and Pete's job to swat that down and say no.
So it's Batgirls. It's a 3-part Fear State tie-in backup. And given the Batman's double shipping during Fear State, this will be a month and a half of these 3 parts. Which is a nice little teaser. You get a sense of, and this has worked for other books. The backup in Detective that's building to Task Force Z has actually made me into that book. So
I went back and I read the first part of that.
Oh yeah, cool.
So when I have more time, I'm going to read the next 2 parts.
Yeah.
Since I have Detective sitting there, but yeah.
Yeah. It's only 10 pages each, so it's a quick catch up. Yeah.
Yeah, but on a week like this.
Oh sure, yeah. That's
after Monday. I was out the window.
So, yes, this is Batgirls. This is Cass and Steph and Babs, and the only real thing here with this, connected it to the other books that feels a bit weird is that it's sort of directly like referencing Nightwing, and Nightwing references back to this kind of. But what's weird is that Barbara in this is completely Oracle the whole time, and in Nightwing she's like in the Batgirl suit and out doing Batgirl. My mind couldn't quite connect how they were syncing up.
Does feel like a slight editorial flub.
Yeah, especially since the cliffhanger in Nightwing kind of says, "See what happens to them," and Batgirl's like, "Wait, so that's it." So she's already in the outfit before this backup. That's a bit weird, but okay.
So maybe this happens. So it goes. The Batwoman story where they first see Cass with the imposter, and then it cuts to this, and then it goes to Nightwing, and then it goes to 116. So, did
it specifically say 116 at the end of Nightwing? Okay. Yeah. Okay, all right. Okay, so it's not before this one. Okay. That's a little bit better. So it's basically the magistrate are causing chaos. The big thing though is that Seer, whoever's taken over the Oracle network, is causing chaos and breaking up communications. Steph and Babs lose contact with Cass, although we get some great action. I think the first thing I'll say about this is I'm excited about the art in this new book because I really like the art in this. How did you feel about it, Connor?
Yeah, mostly a big fan. I think there's the odd bit here or there where it's a little bit angular for my liking, but I like the overall vibe.
Yeah, very square heads.
Yeah,
very square heads. It's very cartoony. But it's got like a lot of detail in the line work. There's a
flow to it too.
There's a flow to it. I like the coloring. I like the color palette specifically, quite a bit. And I think
the background work reminds me like James Stokoe.
Oh, I can see that. Yeah. I think it's kind of the perfect tone that I would actually want for a Batgirl's book, actually. You know, when I think of, like, you know, my favorite Batgirl stuff from either Cassie's run or the Stephanie Brown stuff with Brian Q. Miller, not that they have art exactly like this, but you could almost take the blocky art from the Cass stuff and then the art from the Stephanie Brown stuff, and if you put them in a blender, you might get something that's not that far away from the style of this. So I kind of appreciate that. So yeah, so they get word about Cass, even though we do get a couple of great pages of Cass, like, just tearing shit up because she's Cass. But Steph goes off to try and find her, and is able to get to her. There's a lot of sort of communication and narration from whoever's taken over, the seer character, who they do heavily imply is someone else that we might recognize when we do eventually, because, you know, she's got a digital, like, disguise. So we might know who. I mean, maybe it'll just be a random person. It's just a disguise. So
it could be that they want a disguise, so they're not immediately recognized. That's probably good advice for a villain, right?
Yeah, but
we can talk about this in Nightwing.
Sure, but I mean, it could also end up just being like, you know, oh, it's the calculator. Or
that was my first guess as well. Do I think the reason we've both gone to that? Because the calculator plays in fairly heavily to that Batgirl run.
Yes, it does. Yeah. But also,
he was trying to be the anti-Oracle, right? Like, that was his whole mission.
That was kind of part of it, yeah.
Yeah, no, there's panels here of like sorry. It's because I say Batgirl, but then I sort of backed out because I was like, no, I need to specify.
More specifically.
Yeah. So there's like a back-to-back panel of Steph and Cass, and I think they do a great thing here where Cass, quite rightly, is speaking in short sentences, just one or two words, and Steph is a motor mouth, so there's a nice contrast between them as they're doing this. And there's a great little moment actually. And this is where I really kind of like the art, is Steph says, Cass, you know, you took out all those guys yourself, they're in the sewers at this point, you're amazing and kind of scary, and you can actually see Cass getting kind of sad behind the mask, and she says, I didn't mean, and she's like, Cass, it's okay, we're Batgirls, scary's good, we're supposed to be scary.
Yeah, scary's a good thing.
So yeah, I dig that a little bit. So yeah, basically Seer's like taunting Babs, and you know, Steph and Cass are trying to get to her, and it just kind of ends more or less about there as Seer's basically saying, hey, I've got eyes on everything, I know where they are, I've got eyes on you, and it's kind of taunting her with images of her dad, saying, I could be your dad, wouldn't that be funny, and then images of Batman and stuff. So you know, as with a lot of these backups that are multi-parts, you know, 10 pages is not a lot of time to get a lot of story in, but I did like the characterizations, I did like the art, and I did like the action. So
I like the vibe.
Yeah, the vibe's good. So I'm feeling more positive about this book now after reading this than I was before.
Yeah,
you were quite cautious, weren't you?
The writing team's not like worked for me that well.
Doesn't inspire a lot of excitement in Pete.
Yeah. But I like this quite a bit, so I'm kind of looking for it. I mean, it's hard to rate a backup like this because it is just the first part of a story, and there's not much plot actually progressing yet. So I'll say 7 because of that. But I mean, in terms of like what I like about it, like I feel much better about it. So it's a big success in my mood, even if I'm not rating it like absurdly highly. What do you feel, Connor?
Yeah.
Like a 7, like if I'm giving it a number, like, you know, it's good. I enjoyed what's there. I can't really go any higher than that because there's not enough meat to it.
Given that I don't usually even bother reading the backup to Batman, and I ended up liking the backup more than the main story this week, is there's a notable point to make.
Yeah,
a notable point. So, fair play. Fair play to Batgirls. I'm happy. It seems like it's going to be good now. So that's cool.
I will give it a 7.5 since you jumped right over me.
I didn't realize you read it, Matt.
Yeah. Nope. Oh, jeez.
I didn't think you read it. I'm sorry, Matt. I did not realize you read it.
I'd been weighing in.
I thought you were just looking at the art as we were talking about it and sort of coming up on the fly. Sorry, Matt.
Jeez. This guy.
Well, he's obviously got the issue.
I'm gonna read everything I read this week, but I'm not gonna read the Batgirls backup.
Well, it was a busy week. I thought you might have said, "Oh, I don't have time for backups." I wasn't planning for. I didn't.
No, I would have had time.
This is a man that has time for Peacekeeper.
Aye. Wait, I'm getting. Hold on. It's Peacemaker from Suicide Squad, right? I'm starting to get the two names confused. Yeah. For a second, I thought
Pet Eagle.
I thought Carter said the wrong thing there, and I'm like, no, you're talking about that's from Suicide. That's John Cena, and I went, oh wait, no,
it's because I didn't say one at the end of it.
Yeah.
That's kind of my bad, but I still definitely said the right thing.
Yeah, it's Peacemaker and Peacekeeper. Yeah, that's the reason why that actually will get quickly confusing, to be honest.
It's too much peace.
Yeah, too much peace, not enough misery for Connor. All right. Nightwing, issue 85. Tom Taylor writing, Robbi Rodriguez on the art. And this kind of shifts the focus. Nightwing's obviously still there. It's still Nightwing and Babs, but this one shifts the narration and the point of view to Babs. Yeah. Which is kind of nice because she's not had her own book for a little bit, and I've been enjoying her characterization in Nightwing. So it's kind of nice to have Taylor sort of write from that perspective.
When Taylor nails her voice.
Oh yeah. I mean, immediately
Taylor nailing a voice. I'm shocked.
No, right?
Immediately, you have like her sort of like summing up kind of what's going on, which again is kind of this necessary evil, but it's a nice touch where you see Steph and Cass again. You see Oliver and Dinah and Wonder Woman's like, hey, the Oracle network is compromised, don't believe anything you hear from it after this message, kind of thing. So Dick and Babs destroy her computers and stuff, and they're like, hey, she's got like a Site 2 that's got a lot of the important stuff that's like sort of not on a network, so it can't be easily accessed and stuff, so we need to go and deal with that like right now. But there's some great moments in here actually, and the art, I think we said this a lot last issue, which is like, it's not as good as the regular artist, but it's by no means bad art. I
think it's spectacular when it does the flashbacks.
Flashbacks are great. Yeah.
Sometimes when the artist does Bab's face and the cowl, especially the new cowl, it looks a little bit wonky.
No, I agree with that. There's actually a panel right at the end of the book where Bab's head looks freaking weird, and I don't know what was going on. I do think the motion, as I see all them like running on rooftops and jumping and grappling to the city, I think all that looks great.
Yeah, I was gonna say the sense of motion and action and everything like that. But there's the odd page where her head looks way wonky, and it's just like the design of the cowl or whatever. There's
a panel towards the end, I think the one I'm talking about, where I think she looks like Marilyn Manson. Like that is what I'd compare her to in the panel.
At the end of the book, not the end of the flashback.
End of the book, yeah. I think. I mean, if it's not, I'll point out when I get there. I'm saying that from memory. But there's a great moment actually after they smash all the computers where Babs is like, hey, she set you into a trap to mess with me. It was never about you. And I just love the smirk in Nightwing's face. He says, I like to think it was a little about me. It's one of those things where the art gave it a little bit of personality, which is always nice to see. So they go off. It's got that thing as well when they're out in the city. It's got that thing that a lot of Future State had, which is the blinding lights of Gotham, which especially fits in right now because they're doing that whole thing where the magistrate have got drones and the big eye in the sky and all that.
It's a techno. What do you call it? It's not like a techno noir vibe, but like there's a vibe to it. I can't think of it, but there's a word for it.
Neo noir?
No. There's just like just with all the bright lights, but everything's still dirty.
Okay.
Like there's a.
It's bordering on cyberpunk, to be honest.
Yeah.
Huh?
It's bordering on cyberpunk.
Yeah, maybe that's the word I'm looking for. But but like it's still lit up, but that doesn't mean that it's not like, still dark and gritty and whatnot. It just has that outward appearance.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That sounds like mascot like
episode of strange noises from Matt.
That sounds like mascot like a little girl tied up in a basement or something.
Yeah.
Just
No,
like, shh.
my dog's excited my wife's home and she's starting to howl. And yeah.
Oh dear. Hell, anyone can hear me. Help me. Matt's kidnapped me.
That's enough.
So yeah, we get a flashback. It's sort of like when they're leaving the tower. It's Babs like talking young Dick into like going out on their own as Batgirl and Robin. So she's in the classic grey suit. He's in his Robin suit, and they're holding hands and jumping.
No pants.
No pants. No.
The Robin suit with no pants.
Yes. In fact, the next panel after that, when it comes back to present day, I mentioned how good it looked when they were going through the city, but that first panel of like, she's almost got that classic Batman thing where like the cape just kind of becomes a silhouette, and you don't see her legs, and Nightwing's in the foreground. That looks really nice.
I love it with the lights behind them as well.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff. And the art later on does that thing it did last time. It keeps that what I'm going to call the Sam Neill Daredevil thing, where it sort of like goes into like the device changing and the little.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah, you know, like it's like the little. Oh, it turns into a.
Yeah, it's like an instruction manual.
Yeah, it turns into like a smoke grenade or something in this one.
Yeah, pellet. So like he manages to turn it into like a smoke grenade launcher.
Yes,
it's cool as shit.
But in between that, I like the conversation they have about how Oracle or how Dick is taking her to task. Where it's like, you didn't think this was a bad idea having constantly monitoring everybody, you know, an Oracle in every camera.
And it boils down to, well, now I do.
Well, yeah. Well, it seemed like a good idea at the time because it wasn't going to be misused because I was always going to be in control. And I love that's their dynamic, right? That he's the one going like, well, you're so smart, but how did you see this? You know? And then she'll call him out. You know, we've seen her call him out for other, you know, things that he does.
They kind of complement each other. It's just like she has the like almost that arrogance of Bruce, which is the she believes she can control things like this.
Yeah.
And Dick's there to call her out, but Dick's kind of the one who's more jump in head first without thinking. And she'll call him out on that. You know, there's a nice balance between them, which I love it. Really nice. So good stuff. So they fight past the drones to get into this storage
Feels
locker.
Like a strange oversight that they don't have any sort of infrared vision. Like, you know, just me.
I mean, sure. I didn't really think about it, but yeah, I mean,
like if I'm equipping state-of-the-art drones to fight in Gotham against potentially Batman, famous for using smoke.
But to that, you would think that Saint would think that he's going to have everything such under control that he's not going to have the infrared because they have every other technology, you know?
Yes, but they are befuddled by some smoke.
Yes.
Well, I mean, Simon's saying...
Well, not just smoke, but smoke and Batgirl and Nightwing working together. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just smoke. Well,
it might as well be. They're blind.
I mean, Simon's saying, as we have seen, is not... you know, he's a little unhinged, and you know this is the sort of thing where you could almost do a comedy cutaway where he realizes, you know, you could have him go, "Damn it, I should have put infrared sensors on my robots."
Or he's having a panic attack, and we're like, "Don't tell me, don't tell me, don't tell me. I don't want to know." You know.
I just imagine a techie spinning around in his chairs like, Mr. Saint, did you ever see the movie Predator? Because I've got a few suggestions of how we can upgrade our drones.
No, they'll just cover themselves in mud. It's fine.
So they get inside, and immediately there's smoke, and there's a moment here where Dick gets shot in the head, you know, a la like he did before. I don't think that...
like that.
I think because of the smoke... you immediately know it's not real, so I don't think there's anything where the readers
as well. What you're neglecting to mention is the smoke is green.
Yes, that too. But I think because I feel like, you know, if you describe this to someone might think, oh, they're pretending to do the Dick shot in the head again thing, and like no, but you know it's just a fear. You know, like knowing it's Bab's worst fear that she's seeing, and that's what we're actually looking at means that there was never even a question that this was real or like, you know, it's very clear what it is from the get go.
Yeah. I don't like being reminded of Rick Grayson though.
Yes.
That's my fear. That's right there.
I mean, this was dead Grayson. So,
this was just full on dead. Yes. But she's fighting the perpetrator that she believes did this, and just as she's about to get grabbed, the gas mask comes on, and Tim's there. He's got them both with respirators, and he's like, "Don't worry, there was fear toxin. Whatever you saw wasn't real." And we finally have the Babs Dick kiss. Babs just rushes over to Dick and kisses him, and Tim goes, "Oh, finally!"
Yeah, I love that.
We've been waiting for this. So, now, sweet moment. If you've been enjoying their chemistry in this book, this is a nice. It's nice to have a moment like this in the big crossover where, yeah, sure, the crossover might feel like a bit of a redirection from whatever the book's doing, and we'll go back to that soon. But having character beats like that pay off when there's a big crisis like this still makes it feel like it's a very valid part of the journey for the characters in the run, even if it isn't integral to the overall story that's been told in the run. So, neat. They're going to shut everything down. Seer's, monologuing and giving them shit for it, and they can't figure out who she is. But Babs does say, "Yeah, but we can see your background, so we know you're up there. You're in the big eye in the sky." And but this is when we get the big cliffhanger where she's like, "Hey, I'm monitoring your clock tower, and some of your friends are there." And we see Babs and Steph arrive in the clock tower. Our three characters run, so we get this great panel at the bottom of that page where they're running towards the clock tower, and the final page is the clock tower exploding and them looking up, and it's that final panel where I think Babs looks like Marilyn Manson. Yeah. It's horrific. I don't know what's going on there, but good ending to the issue though. It's a good cliffhanger.
Yeah. And this is the one that says at the end of this, read the Batgirl story in Batman 116, which is the next issue, not this week's.
Yeah, so that's fair.
Follow up on presumably the Steph and Kat.
The sad part is I think that top panel is really good. From behind where they're all looking up at the explosion. I think that looks great, and then the faces at the bottom just kind of ruin it. But
so about the where Seer is. So this person works for the magistrate. We're supposed to believe, right?
Either works for or I don't know if they're doing this at the behest of the magistrate or if this is someone who is sort of doing their own thing.
That's my question, because they know now, they know who Barbara is, right? Because in the Batgirl story, she takes the form of
her dad,
her dad and Bruce, as Batman, So if it's someone working for the magistrate, then does that person know who the Bat family already is, and do they just not care?
I mean, this person definitely does. They kind of call them by name multiple times over various issues that we've had.
Which I think, and it's not like Simon Saint seems to have that knowledge, so I would suspect that this is someone who maybe is posing to work for the magistrate, or has maybe just, I don't know, infiltrated.
On a bit of a power trip and not passed that knowledge along to Simon Saint.
Possibly. It wouldn't surprise me if it does turn out to be someone that we do know who would have maybe some of this knowledge.
I didn't even think about the calculator until you guys mentioned that.
Saint's willing to work with Scarecrow. We already know that.
Mm-hmm.
Presumably, maybe some Mad Hatter. Yeah, wouldn't put it past him at this point. Why not some of the lower tier villains as well that are just on the payroll?
Yeah, and then the question is because obviously this is adding to the fear in the city, so there's a good reason to think that Scarecrow might be ordering this, whoever's doing it, and maybe he's even using these toxins to control them. That's possible.
More of my idea is this person's working with Scarecrow more than they're working with Saint. They just, doing what Scarecrow did. You know what I mean? Where they got in using Saint's tech, but they have their own mission.
Whether it's because it's something they want to do or just because Scarecrow's toxined them into sort of doing this, remains to be seen. I think that's sort of thing we can't really theorize properly about until we know who it is. I feel like once we know who it is, we can sort of maybe make more definitive ideas about what their motive is, or
if it isn't revealed in that same issue.
Yes, that's true. Yes, I mean, obviously, that's very possible. Maybe a 1-2 punch. But yeah, I dug this issue, Nightwing. I think it's better than the last issue of the tie-in arc. Not by a huge margin, because that was still pretty solid. And this is solid again. Still not as great as what the book's doing when it's just on its own. But as far as tie-ins go,
yeah, I mean, we got a solid tie-in. Redondo's getting a break, so come back, recharge for the next part of the book.
Hopefully, getting ahead on his issues a little bit, perhaps.
I see no problems here.
Yeah, nice characterization of Babs. Some nice, sweet moments. Some mostly good art with a couple of dodgy faces.
Yeah,
here or there. So, not too shabby. Matt, what are you giving Nightwing? 84, 85. Sorry.
That's right. I'm giving it an 8.
Connor?
Also an 8.
Yeah, I'd probably go at 8.5 if it wasn't for that horrible last face. That's like a half a point. Just
do you know what? You'd probably have forgiven if it was in the middle of the issue, but it's because it's the very last thing you see. It sticks with you.
Yeah, it's the remaining image is this horrific looking Babs. It's like, what the hell?
She's been Jokerized. Don't know.
So yes, that is Nightwing issue 85. We will stick with Fair State. Catwoman issue 36, Ram V and Nina Vekueva on the art. And this again, Poison Ivy's factoring into this, but it's the other Poison Ivy. It's the kind Poison Ivy.
Yep.
So we've got that going, and a lot of this is about Catwoman and co trying to protect her and get her out of Alleytown because the magistrate are coming for her. So that definitely implies that Saint on some level knows there's more than one Ivy, or at the very least, like, suspects that Ivy's here and is maybe still responsible for all the vines and stuff under the city.
Yeah.
Regardless, things are closing in on Ivy. I did like the small touch that Catwoman quite early on refers to shoes as a Cheshire Cat, and then it's it's only a few pages later where you see Cheshire and the team of like anti-heroes like taking on the magistrate. So it's like, oh, this feels like it's kind of inching us towards.
And the fact they're wearing such similar masks, right?
Yeah.
Like,
it definitely also feels like it's coming before the end of this run.
Yes, and the run ends in like an issue or two. So
I mean, I think we get the new writer in January. It was in those solicits, right?
Yeah, so we have like 2 issues left. Yeah, so that kind of sucks. But it sets up this White Witch, I think this villain, and she's coming after them. A lot of the issue is effectively, okay, what's our plan? We're going to try. Riddler's helping the comms again. Although I'm still kind of a little bit dubious as to Riddler's like allegiance because he feels like he informs Penguin, and I don't know.
He 100% does.
Yeah, and I don't know if they're playing to what Selina wants them to, but we'll see.
No, she did help him get off of whatever drug he was on. So.
Yes. So. Yeah, there's some fun fighting with the anti-heroes, Clayface and Croc. Harley and the Gardener show up, and you can sort of see how the two Ivies are going to be reunited with some of these, because obviously the Gardener and Harley have been more related to the other Ivy, the Queen Ivy and Batman, so you can kind of see how these threads are going to connect in the near future. But there's some banter between them, which is kind of entertaining. And it's all about kind of they almost pull the there's the start of Dark Knight Joker with the school buses. They kind of pull that with some trucks where all the drones can't follow the truck that Ivy's in because they've got 20 trucks that all look the same. So fun stuff. And they take on the White Witch, Catwoman, Harley, and Gardner take on her and her troops, and it's a pretty reasonably drawn fight scene. Some nice art in there, which leads to the cliffhanger of the book, which is that the White Witch is actually just someone that they've got tons of clones of, and they activate 2 of them. So there's going to be 2 White Witches next issue, presumably, and maybe even an army of them the issue after that. So we'll see.
Sounds fun.
It's actually, do you know what? It's because they're in a truck. It made me think of Universal Soldier. If you've seen Universal Soldier, because they go around in this big truck, and all of their Universal Soldiers are all kind of asleep on this truck. It just kind of reminded me of that a little bit.
I'm wondering here if these White Witches have different abilities, because correct me if I'm wrong, White Witch, the one we've been following. She phases, right? Yeah. This one here, they specify versions 4 and 12. Why would you specify specific ones if they don't have different skills?
Yeah, true. Yeah, I mean, because if they were all the same, you would just say versions 2 and 3, assuming that the first one was number 1.
You'd think just the next 2 in the sequence, right? And they mention your power recalibration protocols. So I'm like, okay, what? I'm assuming they're different somehow. I don't. Maybe they all phase, but they do something different. Their own extra skills. I don't know exactly, but I'm intrigued.
I mean, maybe if because they know this team of villains are helping Catwoman, maybe they're going to like, okay, we need something that can counteract Clayface and something that can counteract, whoever else does. So, I mean, Firefly's like burning tons of shit. Maybe we need someone with ice powers. Go, we need another ice villain. That's all we need in DC Comics is
always need another one.
Mistress Blizzard.
I thought my one, I don't want to call it a problem. The one thing that hung me up on this issue was Ram V's voice for Harley. I felt she was a little bit too obnoxious. I thought, like, is this the first time he's written her, as far as we know?
That's a good question.
It felt shaky to me.
Yeah, I don't remember him ever writing her before. That doesn't mean he hasn't, but she's definitely not popped up in this book before.
No,
I would say I didn't feel she was that obnoxious personally, because I think most of the time it was when she was getting hyped up or in the fight, right? Stuff like that, where she tends to be at her worst.
I guess it just comes to a personal taste thing that I feel that there's a fine line when I'm reading Harley, that it just sometimes she's a little bit too much. And I felt here, this Harley was a little bit too much compared to the Harley that Tynion's been. Maybe I was used to Tynion's Harley at this point.
Yeah.
So that was my one drawback on the book, because the art I feel is up there with Blanco had been doing the art. Like, I would say it's step and a half below Blanco's, but it's still, I think.
Yeah, I think the art sells one of my favorite moments, which is when they're sending out all the rest of the trucks. Because you've got Riddler, who's he's at the comms, he's sitting there like,
and he's put on his outfit,
stony face, like staring dead ahead, and then the next panel is like, send out the rest, and he just has this smirk. I think, that moment there, the interplay between the two panels is just fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well that he puts on his outfit, but notably he puts that on after he's made the call to Penguin, which to me said that he is betraying her in some way, because now he's turning into the Riddler, right?
Maybe.
He's playing his own game now.
Yeah. Well, before he was sitting as Edward Nygma in a t-shirt, now he's putting on his Riddler outfit, and like, okay, it was kind of a symbolic thing, I thought, after the call to Penguin, but. I mean, we'll see. I think the art's good. It's not as good as the regular art. It's in a lot of ways it's similar to Nightwing, where good in the vein of the art, but not quite as amazing as the regular art, and that's just kind of par for the course, I guess, with these.
Yeah, even though Blanco's not coming back to this book, this run overall will be, Ramvi and Fernando Blanco's run.
Yeah,
absolutely. It did. Far too ingrained, even if he obviously didn't do every issue, but the vast majority.
Yeah, and it's funny because I enjoyed Nightwing more than I did Batman this week in terms of Fear State stuff, and I think Catwoman probably that rings true as well. I don't think Catwoman's as good as Nightwing's issue, but I did have fun with all the plan coming together. It's not quite a heist, but I mean ultimately it still functions like one, and that there's like a plan, and then you sort of see it be carried out. I mean, they're not stealing Ivy, but it's just effectively the same idea. So, I think that felt fun enough, and I'm kind of excited to see how the run wraps up in like 2 issues with all the Fear State stuff included. Like, are we going to see Valet again, or is Valet just... Is he, when he walked off as a firefighter, or is that just him walking into the night and someone else can use him later in another way?
He walked into Haddonfield and had business to take care of.
I knew you were going to bring up Haddonfield. I knew you were going to make a Halloween reference.
I mean, really, there's one person that could stop Michael Myers. It's Father Valley.
That'll be a face-off I'd like to see.
Yeah, right?
Oh, dear.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say about the issue overall, though. Like, it's not as... I don't know, it's not as like emotionally intricate as like some other issues of Catwoman have been. No. It is very much like a tie-in issue, and like it still plays into what's the character's going through, but it's mostly just dealing with the plot of what's going on rather than any of the sort of more downbeat emotional moments.
Those pieces that I really like are still there though, like with the anti-heroes showing up and them defending Alleytown. Still, there's still like a heisty quality to it, like with the whole truck gimmick and all that stuff. So, and also I'm a soft parody at this point because it's got solid Ivy stuff, you know. So like there's an Ivy storyline going on. So I'm thoroughly like, again, I'm glad I went back and caught up. I say that every time, but it really is some of the strongest stuff at DC. Even something lighter like this, I really enjoy.
Yeah. All right, Matt, what are you giving it?
I'm gonna give it an 8.
Car?
I need to stop agreeing with Matt, but yeah, it's an 8.
Stop copying me.
Well, stop going first then.
I can't control that.
Oh, I will go with 7.5 on this one. Good solid tie-in stuff. It still fits in nicely to what Catwoman's run is. And I do think it's better than the Batman issue this week. So cool. Batman Secret Files Peacekeeper 1, issue 1, James Tynion IV, Ed Brisson, with Joshua Hixon doing the art. So, Matt, you read this.
Yeah. So this is the origin of Peacekeeper 1, and how we had heard through Fear State and the whole A-Day that when Arkham went up, he was the hero, right? And, you know, we've found out that he wasn't a candidate to become a police officer like his father and grandfather because he failed, you know, the psychology. What?
I'm just laughing at Connor casually pouring booze out once you start talking.
So anyways, that even though his grandfather, like we find out here, his great-grandfather to his father were Gotham City police officers, he couldn't pass the psychology aspect of the test. He kept trying, and so here we get into how he was raised, and that we get some scenes with his dad and him early on, and how he was born in Gotham, and he's a citizen of Gotham, and that he's seen it at its worst. But his dad tells him that, you know, when your great-grandfather came from Ireland, there, you know, the only place he could fit in is with the police department. He got to become his own person, and then, you know, he got to instill order amongst the chaos. And then, and also, you know, as he's telling the story, we're getting, you know, in the art, the dad taking Peacekeeper 1 when he's a kid out with him to take care of some business. And you come to find out that the dad and his dad's partner take a good cop, if you will, out of the trunk and beat him mercilessly for basically snitching on him. And we come to find out that the Mahoneys are all bad cops, and that they justify it by saying, like, hey, yeah, sometimes we work with people that we shouldn't, but they like order as much as we do. And come, you know, when Gordon takes over, that goes out the window. So the Mahoneys have this vendetta against Gordon because he gets the dad fired. And, you know, and then we get some more of the backstory of Mahoney is that when he was a kid, he was on a field trip.
Every time we say Mahoney, right? All I think Steve Gutenberg and Police Academy. Yeah. That's all I'm thinking, and I'm like, is his dad Steve Gutenberg? Is this like
no?
What's going in my head because I watched Halloween Kills last night, and I don't think it's the name of those kids in the flashback.
No, it's Mulaney.
But it's just close enough that it go every time I hear it, I'm like, that stupid movie.
Yeah, that's the one that's like you. This is that. Yeah. The ginger one.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Mulaney's.
Well, that was weird.
I think I preferred it when you were cracking the children of the corn jokes, to be honest.
Oh, sure. Well, the weird thing about that is I was sure that was setting up. So I was like, oh, we're going to meet these characters as adults in present day because they made the point of going, don't mess to the Mulaney's, and then it never comes up again. Like, why did you have that big moment where the camera goes into his face and he's like, anyway, sorry, Matt. Let me go.
Yeah, so as Dad got fired, he's upset because he got busted by Gordon taking a bribe, and we see a younger Peacekeeper 1, and he's on a field trip, and the field trip to the museum ends up getting interrupted by Mad Hatter, who uses his tech on the children and uses them to steal art. And even though the Gotham police know this, and that Batman broke it up. The dad's still pissed that his son got caught up with some of the Gotham, super villain trash. And it makes him feel inferior. So this is what leads him to try to get in to the police department. He goes to see Gordon. Gordon's like, hey, I know your name. You guys are well known. Just know, though, that I don't hold you responsible for what your grandfather and father had done. I'm for everybody making their own path. And Peacekeeper 1 tells him in the interview, he's like, well, no, they were good cops doing bad things for good reasons. And Gordon's like, no, that wasn't the only thing your dad did. We have a file in the back, and he had to go. And, this leads to him working Arkham and how he feels that why don't they just kill all of these, all the guys that come through Arkham? And one of the other security guards is like, well, no, this is job security, man. As long as they keep having crazies in Gotham, we're still going to have a job, and they're never going to help them. That's what this place is all about. And he's very bitter because he always wanted to be a cop. And come to find out that Jeremiah Arkham, who's running the place, doesn't like his attitude because one of the villains, I have to go back and look, was basically trying to escape or made a lunge at him, and he just beats the piss out of him. And Arkham doesn't like that. And he tries to cover it up by saying that he was trying to escape. He goes, no, we have it on camera, man. It was Mad Hatter. That he basically takes out all of his frustrations on Mad Hatter as Mad Hatter's locked in the cell. So they're basically going to let him go. And he's like, well, if they're going to let me go, they're not going to have their files. So he moves these big, like, gas canisters that I'm not sure what they use for an Arkham. But that he's going to take out the Hall of Records as Joker is attacking Arkham, and he's kind of the reason why the big explosion at Arkham happened. That had he not moved all those canisters there, which then he goes back to save two nurses who were using they were oxygen tanks for in case there's a gas attack or whatever in Arkham. That they're there trying to breathe so they don't breathe in all the toxin that's in Arkham. And that's why he's there and gets blown up and gets made to be the candidate for Peacekeeper 1. And as we're learning his backstory, we see him going through the sewers of Gotham, he said that he has to go home. He ends up going to his dad's bar that he opened after he got dismissed from the police force. And he realizes that he's like, well, no, I'm a good cop. I'm doing what I'm supposed to. You're the disgrace. And him and his dad get into it, and he throws him up against the wall and, lets him know that this isn't who he is. He's Peacekeeper 1, and he's going to go make this all right. And that Scarecrow, he says, Scarecrow's right. It's time to show the city a new era. Batman's failed, and I'm their future. And ends with a really cool panel of him walking off into the horizon, and it's all shaded in red with a big creepy Scarecrow in the back. Hixon's art is really well done. It reminds me of Michael Lark. It's just not as refined, so it really hits. As we're talking about all the crime type stuff, there's kind of a Gotham Central vibe going on with all the cop shenanigans, and it really plays with the shadows. And you actually kind of end up feeling bad for old Sean Mahoney, except the fact that he still tries to justify his family's past and whatnot. But he 100% is the hero of his story. And this was something that I kind of begrudgingly read. Like, I was like, I missed out on the Miracle Molly one that you guys all liked. Maybe I should give this one a go. And it ended up, I liked it a lot. I mean, it's not, you don't need it for Fear State, but it kind of does fill in the gaps on Peacekeeper 1 in a fun way. So I'm going to give this a 7.5.
Okay. I mean, I'm sure it's solid, but it was just, because it's Tynion at least driving it, if not being the one writing the dialogue.
Well,
so
he does the plot, and then Brisson does the story. Well, Tynion gets a story credit. Brisson gets the writing credit.
Yeah, Brisson's a pretty solid writer as well, usually.
Yeah. If it was just a busy week. That's the only reason I didn't read this.
No, it's pretty solid. Just I mean, and again, it might just be it was giving me Gotham Central vibes, and this is just like the other side of the coin of that. But yeah, and just the whole dynamics of Gotham are really at play here. That you find out the family's been working with it for the Falcones this whole time. So yeah, it's real good. If you have time, I would say go back, give it a read. If not, it'll be collected somewhere. I'm sure.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at this point if there's going to be like a companion trade that has this Malcolm Ollie book, and then maybe
there will absolutely just be a Fear State book.
Yeah. Tales of Fear State.
Yeah, and probably the two stories from Urban Legends that are really, it'll be all the things that don't fit into their own full trade will just get bundled together in some sort of companion book.
Yeah.
And then there'll probably be an omnibus or something at some point that has everything in reading order, but that won't come first. It never does.
Oh, that'll be a little while. Usually a few years at least.
And it probably isn't big enough to be an omnibus. I mean, unless it's like the last part of Tynion's run as an omnibus, maybe. But it'd probably just be like a big oversized hardcover. But cool. So yeah. So there was 4 Fear State related books this week.
It's a lot of Fear State.
Sometimes they just bundle up awkwardly, so they don't give that much thought to the scheduling of these things. But anyway, moving on. The Flash 775. Jeremy Adams writing with Fernando Passarin on the art this time, so not Deuce like the last several issues. I had no idea this was oversized when I sat down to read it. It's one of those things because I'm reading digitally. I'm getting to a point where I'm like, I feel like this, and it wasn't because I was actually kind of enjoying the issue, but like I was at a point where I'm like, this feels like it's been longer than 20. What page am I at? And I was on like page 27, and I'm like, oh wait a minute.
So is there a reason why it was oversized?
775. It's
It's done this a few times though, hasn't it? This where it's not had a backup and it's just kind of been longer.
Yeah. And it's not super size. It's annual sized at best. It's not. It's like 40 pages. And it kind of pays off something that the book's been building to, which is this sword's been flying through space, and like there's been sort of individual just like getting Wally back on his feet in the status quo. He's got a job now working for Mr. Terrific. He's got his family life. All this is going on. So all that new stuff's been happening kind of as this has been building up, and then this issue kind of finally gets to it. And it's mostly pretty solid stuff. If you've been enjoying this book, and I know not everyone thinks it's that great, I think it's been a perfectly solid, dependable book. Not like an amazing blowaway thing, but definitely a fun time. I do think Passarin on art here is mostly pretty good. There's 1 or 2 weird moments, but
Passarin did quite a bit of Hawkman, right?
I think so. Yeah,
I'm remembering the name right.
The first page, when you open it, is like, so this sword, this spear or swords is landed in the middle of a street in Central, maybe Keystone, whatever city Wally's in.
One of the cities.
Yeah, one of the twin cities.
One of the twin cities. You got a 50-50 shot of being right. So. And
Superman's there, and he's trying to pull it out of the ground, and he can't. So you're kind of getting like a Mjolnir or Arthur's sword kind of thing, where it's not about strength because Superman can't pull it out. But he starts
Mjolnir he knows, but not Excalibur.
I actually
one's superior, and it's Mjolnir. So
I am aware that technically Excalibur isn't really the sword in the stone. That's a different sword, but still.
But for the sake of conversation, Excalibur's the sword in the stone.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a stone, it was an anvil. It's fine.
What will really upset you, Connor, is that the last episode of Babylon 5 I reviewed had some King Arthur stuff in it, and when I was
he fell asleep.
When I was discussing it, I couldn't remember the name of the sword and called it something else, which I think will really upset you. I sort of shrugged and went, "What's the sword called? Camelot?"
Excalibur is possibly the most famous sword name in all of history.
Don't care. It's all boring shite. So Matt looks disgusted with me.
What are we doing here, Matt?
I don't know.
And then it started referencing like all of the knights that Arthur was with, and I'm like, I don't know any of these characters. Shut up. Shut up. Bunch of stupid names.
Is it what is it? Gawain?
Gawain, yeah.
Gawain, Lancelot, Percival. What else do we got?
I couldn't be more bored.
Bedivere, Sir Kay, his brother, his foster brother.
Anyway, so Superman's trying to pull this thing out of the ground, and he starts getting kind of antsy about it. Like, he actually snaps at Wally, and he's like, "I'll do this, damn it!" And he's like, "Oh, this is kind of weird." And it's like, it's your first sign that something's not quite right because Superman's acting a little out of character. And then Mr. Terrific gives Wally shit for not being at work, even though when he hired him, he made it very clear, like, you know, I'm hiring you knowing you're the Flash. You can speed off and do other things when you need to. So it's like, okay, clearly this spear, especially since the title of the story at the start in the first page is called Beacon of Hate. It's like, okay, clearly this spear is spreading hate, right? It's making Superman act like a dick. It's making Mr. Terrific act like a dick. Wally somehow isn't being affected by it. But then we go through, and like the other people he works with are acting like assholes. He goes home to Linda for a minute, and she snaps because the cupboard doors have been left open. And it's like, okay, this is clearly something that's happening. There's a plot point set up at his workplace, which is the lab with the shielding stuff, which is going to come into play later, which is the only reason why I mention it. But Wally speeds off to deal with something, and Mr. Terrific starts fighting him. He shows up, and he's like, "I thought I told you to get back to work," and he starts using these T-spheres to attack him, and he makes kind of like laser beam, like a circle of laser beams around him that'll block Wally from getting to him, and it's fairly fun stuff. And Wally's starting to put together that something's not quite right here, and when it cuts to the next scene, it's it's the Trickster, who's jumping on a giant whoopee cushion because he's going for this spear, and it actually starts to move for him. And Wally's like, wait, Superman couldn't lift it, but this asshole could? Like, what the hell? What's going on? And obviously, I'm thinking, well, is it because it's like an evil thing, so only villains can move it? Like, you have to have hate in your heart or something?
So it's like the opposite of me on there.
It's like the opposite, basically. And then the very next page is a 2-page spread of like a bunch of villains coming for this thing. And it's like, Giganta's there, Ultra Humanite, Grodd, King Shark, Killer Frost, Dr. Light, bunch of villains. And so Wally kind of, we have a couple of fun pages of him just kind of fighting a bunch of them. Some of it more fun than others. I particularly enjoyed Rainbow Raider coming after Wally and being hit by a car right before he gets to him.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Which is a wonderful piece of art, though, because he's coming down this rainbow, and then you just see the car. In the next panel, he's like a puff of multicolour smoke, and the car is just kind of like there, like as if it's him. It's a neat touch. So Wally's like, shit, I need to try and like do something with this spear. It's causing, because basically all the civilians around him, they are starting to fight. Like, everyone's starting to fight. Like, chaos is spreading. Everyone's starting to like go absolute nuts. Wally has the idea to go back to his lab and get this super high-tech shielding that's meant to block certain things, waves or whatever, and he builds a dome out of this shielding around the spear to see if this blocks whatever it's sending out. And sure enough, immediately everyone sort of stops fighting and is like, wait, what the hell's going on? And the villains are all like, we'll be back as soon as I realise why I was here in the first place, because I'm not happy about it, and they leave. But then the dome immediately starts to shatter with like sort of black like cracks, like up, because the dome itself is like pink, so all these black cracks look really kind of notable. And you see just like hatred is spreading throughout the city, like there's random panels from throughout, and then a giant light comes from the middle of this new dome that's been built out of black, and sort of basically hits the spear, and it's this alien from space. I don't know if Starbreaker, who he calls himself, is like a new character, or some deep pool.
That sounds familiar.
The name feels familiar, but I don't know if it's just like generic enough that I'm like, yeah, it could be a thing.
Yeah, because Stormbreaker's a thing. Like, that's immediately what I thought of when I read the word. Now, if he is new, it makes sense that he might just be a new nobody, given what's about to happen to him. But
no. So is he like an energy vampire?
He is an energy vampire, yes. Because I was about to make about 5 Colin Robinson jokes.
There you go. Colin Robinson. I'll tell you guys off air because I almost gave it a name away.
Oh, sure.
But there, yeah. Anyway, No, he's been around for a while.
Okay.
Not anymore, by the sounds of it.
Well,
This might be his last appearance.
Well, it's not so much that he's dead, but he is treated kind of like a quick chump for something else that's more important. But he basically comes saying, "Hey, yes, this spear is, this. I'm going to take this and destroy the universe or whatever. You're going to stop me from devouring," because he wants to basically suck in all the evil energy from this thing. And he says he's an energy vampire, and I just buckled because all I could think of was Colin Robinson and just him going. Like when he's like sucking in the energy of like making people be miserable. It's watch What We Do in the Shadows TV show, guys. It's really good. But so yeah, there's a bit of a fight with him for a brief moment. And sure enough, he goes to pick out the spear, and light comes from it, and darkness comes from it. Like a bunch of different colors. And would anyone like to guess what this spear actually is before I tell you?
So it's a beacon of hatred that affects everybody.
Go on, Matt. Go on. You're going to do it. Get it.
Is it? Is it tied to the Red Lanterns at all?
No.
Eclipso?
No.
It's Eclipso. Starbreaker gets the Eclipso face kind of thing on. It's not quite the classic Eclipso face. It's got a slightly different, more designed look to it. But it's basically he starts talking with a different speech bubble color, and he's like, yes. The whole cosmos will bow before the might of Eclipso, and then Wally immediately goes, this all makes sense now.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, all of this makes sense, and just sort of starts like bantering with Eclipso a little bit. Eclipso obviously is trying to like silence him. He's like, "How dare you like mess with me?" So yeah, he's basically I'm going to take over everything, and he flies off. He just leaves, and Wally's like, "Well, I guess I'll call that a win." But obviously they've set up Eclipso's back now. He's in the body of Starbreaker. So I do kind of like that the payoff to this spear that was flying through space for a few issues does have a big villain attached to it. It was a nice surprise when Eclipso popped out. I was like, oh, okay.
I don't have time to catch up on Flash, but now you give me Eclipso, and now and Superman in the same issue?
I'm pretty sure I read they're going to Gemworld as well soon.
Yeah, but I don't like Eclipso at Gemworld?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I'm not super excited about Gemworld.
How's that not been done before?
Per
How's
se,
there not done
but,
Black Diamond stuff in Gemworld?
I don't know. But the issue ends with a cliffhanger. Basically, Dr. Fate's thing, portal opens up, and his hand comes through and just pulls Wally through it as Wally's grabbed the spear. And they're in what I assume is the Shadowlands, because it's just complete darkness. And Fate's like, Flash, the fate of the universe is in your hands. And Wally cracks a joke about how his hands aren't his best feature, and the final panel of the final bubble of the issue is Fate just sighing. And that's the end of the issue. So it gets the humor of Wally. It feels like a big fun adventure that's going to put up Wally up against Eclipso, and a lot of what got us there was fun. And it didn't feel like a extraneous read at 40 pages. I mean, maybe some of the extended action sequences with the villains and then Starbreaker himself, he could have been cut down, but they had 40 pages to play with, so they had some fun with it. I didn't necessarily feel overly fatigued by it, though, I have to say. The art's pretty good, though. I did kind of enjoy the art here from Passarin. Wally's suit typically looks quite good. The only real complaint I have is that sometimes the emblem on his chest, it's not sticking out of the circle enough to look like a lightning bolt. Sometimes it just looks like a sort of like sharp S at times.
God, you are petty.
What? Why does that mean petty?
Oh, the lightning bolt isn't clearly defined enough at all times.
Well, they've given
but a lightning bolt versus an S is. I hate to agree with Pete.
Given that this S, because it's just these sharp edges and points, given that it looks almost like the S you would get at an SS logo when you don't have the clear lightning bolt definition, yeah, it does stick out to me a little bit, alright?
It's a very specific comparison to draw that too, when there's only one S here.
Well, no, but what I mean is, though, is it looks like one... never mind. Like people who have looked at the art may see what I'm saying there. And it's not in every panel. I'm just saying there's a couple of panels where, because it's not sticking out enough, It looks more like an S inside the shield. But anyway, yeah, I had fun with the issue. You know, I have typically been enjoying the Flash as a very safe, dependable book that's not necessarily punching, like, you know, in the upper weight classes, but
sounds fun enough.
Yeah, between this and another book that I've been reading that's been kind of like in a similar kind of tier, I would say that this had a much better week. So more on that later, but I very much dug this. I would be tempted to even maybe stretch to an 8 out of 10 on this issue. So I think it's actually, you know, getting a bit more solid as it goes, which is nice. And I think Adam's voice for Wally's fairly solid. Again, it doesn't feel like he's reinventing the wheel. It doesn't feel like it's going to be like, oh, this is a run that you're going to have to recommend to Flash. But I think for people who want a nice Wally West Flash run, you know, it's a nice, dependable read. So I'm having a decent enough moment. So yeah, 8 out of 10 for me on Flash 775. But yes, I had no idea it was extra pages when I sat down to read it. That was a bit of a... I was like, oh, I'm on page 27. That's weird. So, cool. Superman, Son of Kal-El, issue 4. Tom King writing with Daniele D. Nicuolo on the art. Not Tim's, even though the cover still says Tim's, because I had to go to the credits page to double check this. Connor's muted, so whatever he said, they have to try and correct me.
Damn it, my mic. Who was writing that?
Oh, I said King. Sorry. I said King. Oh, okay. Sorry, I've written down King. You see, so I read what I written.
Oh, that makes it so much better.
I read what I wrote.
Yeah.
I read what I wrote.
So much better that you had time to think about it ahead of time and still wrote it down wrong.
Look, there's a lot of names to write down, right? There's a lot of books this week.
You've already spoke about one Tom Taylor book.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm more inclined to think there's going to be it. There's also there's a Tom King book too. So it was like 50-50.
I would have Connor, but a coworker was just sending me their Golden Knights tickets for Sunday. So
seriously?
Yeah, for real. So they just texted me as Pete was talking because I was like,
they're like,
hey,
do you want these?
Yeah, and so I was getting all the transfer portal stuff so I can go on Sunday to watch them play the Islanders. So I'm very excited. I haven't seen the Knights in person since 2019.
But didn't you just say they were shit like right before we started?
Yeah, but still watching a shit live hockey team is better than watching a shit team at home. Like,
okay, sure.
Look, Pete, I know you don't understand sports, but sometimes your team is shit. That is a fact of life. More often than not, for most people, your team is shit.
Mm-hmm.
You still go and see them. It's fun.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what.
I've only been to one Angels game that they've ever won.
On the subject of sports, though, I don't care about real sports, but I have been watching Ted Lasso this week.
It's so good.
And I've been having fun with that. I'm on season 2.
So
Roy is the best. Roy's character
is my spirit animal.
Is wonderful.
Yeah.
There's a moment in the Christmas episode in season 2. Yeah, well, actually, there's 2 moments. Probably 2 of the most times I have laughed in that show were in the same episode, and they were both Roy moments. There's that moment where he's trying to perk up his little niece by saying this story about how he ate so much ice cream at a party that he shot himself on the way home, and then the girlfriend like chimes in and goes, "Finish the story," and he just goes, 3 weeks ago. It broke me. It broke me.
Oh, it's so good. I'm surprised you caved and watched it, given your disdain of sports.
He watched all of Mighty Ducks Game Changers.
I know, but
he'll stomach sports enough if there's a good story.
There's like an extra level of association with football. Dislikes that more than most other sports.
I do dislike that more than most other sports, but I think part of the charm of it is because the American coach comes in and doesn't know anything about football. There was something to relate to. There was something to relate to because, you know, when one of them, when what's his face from the Independent stands up and says, "What's the offside rule?" Trent Grimm. There you go. That's the one. What's the offside rule? I'm like, I don't know. I'm right there with Ted. Yes. What is
offside? Same like it is in hockey, right, Connor?
Yes, but there's no fixed line. It depends on where the players are.
Oh God, that's annoying.
So it's the offside rule is if you're is beyond the last defender, then it's offside. Okay. And it's the moment that the ball leaves your foot that you go from.
Also, I mean, just so much of it's bullshit. Like, oh, we have these plays and they position people on the pitch in the little diagram, and I'm like, this is all nonsense. Once it all starts, you all just start running around like a bunch of numpties.
No, that's not true. I mean, you there are design plays that if a good defense mucks it up, yeah, but then that's why having better players.
Pete's talking about something as simple as, and this is probably even because Matt doesn't follow football / soccer at all, but yeah, that's just formations. That's just like, right, is it 4-4-2? 4-3-3 is two of your most basic ones. This is the shape that your players take on the pitch. When sure they'll break around that if they need to cover things, but when they don't have possession, that is generally how they will look.
To give it a serious compliment, beyond just it's really funny and the characters are quite likable for the most part, is that it actually does a really good job of almost every time I think it's going to do a trope that I'm going to be annoyed at, of immediately subverting it by having its characters act in a way that is far more engaging and likable by just not reacting to the thing that would make the TV trope happen, or immediately calling it out, or immediately just acting like normal human beings in a situation as not to create drama.
It's legitimately one of my favorite new shows. It's so good.
Yeah, and I thought the ending of season 1 was quite poignant in how it kind of like finally someone took a lesson, but it also is what ultimately screwed something else, and it was a kind of a poignant ending. So I recommend Ted Lasso. If you happen to have a year and a half free of Apple TV, which I do, I recommend watching Ted Lasso.
And this is coming from the man who hates football.
I do. I hate football with a passion.
Which tells you how good the show is.
My brother's been trying to get me to watch it since last year.
You really should, Matt. You would love it.
I'm holding on because it's been too hyped. I mean, I don't know how I feel with too hyped. I've not found one person to say one bad word. So I was hoping
that's it.
Pete was going to be
I was really worried when I started watching because like I have heard a lot of good things here about this. There's no, and it not only lived up to that, it exceeded my expectations.
It's too feel good, Matt. It's too much. It was so easy to just keep watching episodes because it's so.
I was hoping really. I watched Ted Lasso. I watched 2 episodes. It wasn't for me, and I'd be like, okay, we're good. But Pete's like, I'm on season 2, and I was like, shit. All right. It's not about comics. I'm starving. I'm gonna start getting cranky, and no one likes dealing with a cranky Matt.
All right. Well, just to make it a clean intro to the book again, for the sake of beloved David,
Tom King
cuts these up.
Bruce Timms,
Superman, Son of Kal-El, issue 4, Tom Taylor with Daniele Di Nicuolo on the art. Last issue, if you remember the cliffhanger, is that Fault Line, or Earthquake Girl, was dropped out of a plane by the villain onto the Kent farm. That's because it ended with that happening. And then obviously this issue picks up. I mean, it kind of starts like a moment or two before that because they're talking for a little bit. But then
you see the inside.
Yeah. But then of course, John kind of senses that it's coming, starts saving people. But notably, is it Jay is the soon-to-be boyfriend? He phases out of he becomes almost ghost-like. John's hand just goes right through him,
and he's like, right, guess he's good.
Yeah, I guess he's going to be fine. I'll deal with the grandparents. So he flies them off, and he's really pissed. Immediately, the Justice League responds. I actually kind of like this. I like that the Kent farm is kind of like a protected place where immediately, because something happens, the entire Justice League's like, wait a minute. Like,
I
like the idea that they were like late. There's supposed to be an early warning system that they get there before anything. It's like, no, this is serious. If they got there ahead of
it sells the villain of the story a bit, right? Because it's he was able to like at least trick it enough to get past that for this attack. So Hippolyta gets hit by Fault Line. Probably the one bit of art, I mean, maybe not the only bit, but the first part of the art that kind of I thought was a little rough, because I think the art's generally all right, is even though it's a funny panel of Hippolyta like flying past the moon, and I think it's like Wally's looking up at her. I think it's meant to be Wally's chin as he's looking up.
It is, yeah.
It looks too pointy. It looks stupid. Just me?
No. I don't like the art that much in this. I feel like it. So I looked at the cover and it said Tim's on the cover.
It said Tim? Tim from Screams After Midnight on Superman?
No. He wishes.
Let me go.
He does wish.
Yeah, it says Tim's. This is Taylor Timms.
It does, yeah. Because I saw this name Nicuolo on League of Comic Geeks, which is where I was getting the credits from. But the cover, which is right next to it, didn't say that. It said Tim's. I thought, oh, is this one where they're wrong? So I actually went to the credits page in the book, but the cover does still say Tim's, even on like the finished cover.
I was like, what happened to Tim? Because usually I like Tim's art. Like, I know it's not for everybody. Some people think it's too cartoony. This is like Tim's art, but the cartoon, it's like, it's not as bad as Rosmo. But
not even. More, I don't think it's close to Rosmo.
It edges the cartooniness towards that a little bit more.
Sure, no, I mean, I agree with that. Like, I do think it's a step down from Tim's, but I don't. It wasn't like offending my eyes most of the time, other than one or two like moments where, like things were just a bit too angular, or like heads were a bit too stuck out, or or whatever.
I mean, young John is in memories mostly a smile. Choppers on that kid.
Yeah, I did also dig here because when Wally arrives and he talks to John a little bit, he's like, "Hey, if you ever want any advice, I'm not," because he says, I'm Wally, and John's like, "Wait, why are you telling me you're civilian?" And he's like, "Well, I mean, you probably know everyone else is, and honestly, like, I know what it's like to step into the mantle of like the person you looked up to. Hero. So, how about if you need any advice or you want to talk, I'm around." Like, I kind of dug that, especially since it's like Wally's from a generation of Titans above John.
Mm-hmm.
But after the original heroes, obviously, who weren't Titans ever. That was the point of the Titans, is they weren't the main heroes. But you know what I mean. So he's kind of this mid-generation now, and it's just kind of fun having him kind of like, hey, if you need someone to give advice or whatever, I'm around. So, So there's some flashbacks. Just briefly as he's talking about memories, and Jay's talking to him, and we actually get some other Tom Taylor characters coming in here because Jay's got some contacts, and it's Wink and Airy from Suicide Squad.
This was seeing this on Twitter mentioned was the moment where I realized I didn't read this issue. I mean, I have now.
Yeah.
Obviously. But I had forgotten I hadn't read issue 3 until I read the first page. Was like, hang on, go back, read issue 3. Read issue 3 and was like, right, okay, I'm done with that book now. Move on to the next thing. 2 hours later, I'm scrolling Twitter and Tom Taylor, was like, hey, Wink and Airy showed up in this week's Superman. So I was like, wait, what? Shit, I didn't read it.
So I just want to say that it might make me seem like a bit of a hypocrite that I like Wink and Airy showing up, yet I've railed against Bendis doing this with Naomi.
Because it's not.
However, this has not become a trope with Taylor, right? And that it feels like these guys are making like an actual cameo, that they're not. It's not going to be.
It doesn't. It doesn't feel like it's going to be about them now, and it also feels a bit more natural given what they were doing in Suicide Squad and.
Right.
So if you haven't read 3 pages, not 3 issues.
Yeah. So if you haven't read that, it's like, oh, okay, that's fine. It's not like you don't need that. But if you did read Suicide Squad, you get a little bit more of a.
It's nice to see them, and maybe there'll be more of them coming up, and maybe we'll get a bit more of a story with them. But right now, they're just a plot point. They've got information related to what's his face, whoever the president of Gamora is.
So like, is the truth related to whatever the cause that the revolutionaries were a part of? Right.
So
for the record, the president is called Bendix. And I remember that because it's not Bendis.
Bendix, all right.
Bendix.
Wait, Bendix is bald?
It's Bendis, but with an X instead of an S.
Bendis is bald? Bendix is bald.
I mean, I was assuming that was more of a reference to Lex Luthor, because this is John's Luthor, effectively, right now. But, I mean, maybe there's a Bendis.
Bendix is also we established this last time, a Wildstorm character, right, that Taylor has pulled out. And this whole thing that we'll get there about what they're creating, these post-humans, which can't we just call them mutants? Like, does Marvel have that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Marvel. Yeah, gotcha. I think legally there might be some trouble there.
I think probably legally no, but also, is it worth the hassle when you can just call them something
Absolutely else? Not. But these are mutants, right? Like,
I mean, what's wrong with metahumans? Like that's usually what we use in DC.
Yeah,
why not?
These aren't regular metas, Pete. These are post-humans.
Okay, true. Okay, yes, as opposed to pre-humans. Or
and is this tied to Wink and Airy from before? Because Airy was from their mom was the leader of which island?
Oh, I'm not going to pull that out of my ass, Matt.
Random Caribbean island.
Yeah. So is this tied to that? And I like that there's layers here going on, and I feel like this is how you do that, where you can keep running, a thread from Taylor's from his DC work. So,
yeah, layers like cake. So
sure,
those are good.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring up the onions again. We've been over this last episode I was on.
No, it's layers are like cake because screw Shrek and that racist Mike Myers. That's.
I love how Matt has no idea what's going on there.
Nope.
Mike Myers has got a lot to answer for with his Scottish impersonations, man. That's all I'm saying.
You mean that's basically based off of his dad?
I don't care. I don't care if his dad's Scottish.
It's a wonderful job.
Wait, hold on. Are we talking about the comedian or the killer?
The comedian.
Okay.
Why not both?
How do we know they're not one and the same? We've never seen Michael without his mask off. Which still is one of my favorite Baby Driver jokes. Don't you get the Mike Myers mask?
No, but you joke about this, but in the movie, they actually think a man who's like 5'2" and has the body shape of the penguin might be Michael Myers.
Hey, Pete, look, I've got an important life lesson for you here.
Oh, yes.
People are idiots.
Yeah, true.
People
guys,
are idiots.
Let's keep talking about Superman. Please.
All right, so basically this kind of confirms stuff that we already know as the reader, because we've been seeing some of the villain stuff play out, which is that it is Bendix who sent Faultline, and they've got intel that suggests that they are taking some of these post-humans and are weaponizing them for their own means. John takes this info to Lois, who's like, yeah, this is actually good research. There's not enough to nail it on him, but there's a lot of good work here. I like that he uses his mum as a resource. So John's like, well, I'm going to go and have a talk with this asshole. And Lois is like, hey, wait a minute, he's the president of a country. You don't want to cause any international incidents now. And so I was like, I'll be nice. I'll be nice about it.
Yeah.
So we get kind of, it's very much the classic, Superman floating outside Alexi's window kind of moment, where he shows up to Bendix and basically, oh, you're an idiot for coming here. Like, it's like, well, did you attack my grandparents? It's like, I would never harm an innocent family. Like, I'm always a peaceful nation, and you've been tricked anyway. Those people you saved, they're all fugitives. They're criminals.
It's very North Korea, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. So John hears someone screaming. This is all a trap, though. This is all to lure John into a trap. And we actually tie in, because, issue 1 was fairly standalone, relatively speaking, but this kind of brought it back in, because the fire guy that set fire to the forest is in this chamber. And John's struggling with the heat, but he's like, hey, I'm going to get you out of here. I'm going to help you. But he's like, it's not me. I'm not the one causing this heat. It's not me. And John flies up. He gets blasted with a bunch of rays from this it's almost like a cerebral looking room. He gets blasted with all these rays. He flies out up into the sky, and he's like, no, I can't control my powers. My body's changing. Whatever they've done to me is messing with me. So he's like just firing his heat vision into the sky. It's like he's losing control. And that's our big kind of cliffhanger. And his super hearing's also kicking into overdrive, where he can hear everyone, but he can't really.
Yeah, it's like his cells have been
supercharged.
Overcharged. Yeah.
I mean, I do. If I was to make a guess right now, I would say that Bendix wants to make it look like he's attacking the country, so he can be justified in unleashing his military on him or whatever.
Yeah.
He wants an international incident.
Be.
Yeah.
I do like that they point out that what made John an enemy to Bendix, by doing the stuff with the refugees, and he got arrested for them. And it was like, it wasn't the fact that he rescued a bunch of them. It's, almost that he took the stand.
He made a statement.
Yeah, and that's what's pissing off Bendix, because he seems to be someone that, he understands how subtle gestures work.
Yeah, I suspect this is not simply just spite, and petty revenge either. I suspect it's let's discredit, John, make him look like he's unhinged, he doesn't know what he's doing, he's coming after me, and therefore, the world stage will then be more on my side.
Yeah, I would say it's not about revenge. It's more about he sees John challenging him as a long-term problem that could keep spiraling into more and more questions and more opposition. So it's more of a strategical play than like a, oh, he's pissed me off play. Not that he doesn't seem like someone who might also be petty as well. I'm sure that there's a little bit of that.
That might be there as well, yeah. Can't rule it out.
But and we know that the island, Gamora, is they're for whatever reason messing with these post-humans, and whatnot. So it's funny to me that when you think about Wink and Airy and where Airy comes from, and just like Tom Taylor maybe because he's from Australia, has a thing for islands. You know, think about Unkillables.
It's like saying we have a thing for islands.
Well, I'm just saying your guys' works of art aren't constantly set around island. You know, like even think about Unkillables with the tree lobsters.
Okay, sure.
You know, that was all from an island. Right, that was super isolated.
I feel like
Tom Taylor and islands go together well.
I feel like an island is a broad enough idea that I don't think that it can, him using it a few times means any sort of preference to island stories.
If anything, like if I'm thinking of islands in storytelling, my first thought is Bond villain Les. That's what my mind.
I would say Australia's too. I mean, obviously Australia is an island. I'm not saying it isn't, but Australia's too big for like when you picture an island in a movie or a story or a comic. You think of a small island. You think of an island that's really contained and.
Judging from the Mercator app, Greenland is a lot bigger than Australia. So.
I didn't say.
How is that relevant?
I didn't say it was the largest island.
No, I'm just saying because it was like it's a large. You know, it's almost too large. You don't think of it as an island.
The point I'm making is if you live right in the middle of Australia, you have to go so far to get to the water.
I know.
That it doesn't.
I know. Let me have my joke about Tom Taylor loving islands. I mean, because he's from Australia.
Hell, we're the UK. Even the UK feels. I mean, yeah, you can get to the shore relatively quickly from any point.
You know where I'm from, the city I'm from is the most central city in the UK. Like in the sense that it is the furthest you have to drive in any direction. You know, if you pick a direction, you drive towards
this
the coast.
Explains a lot about Connor.
If you want to get to the coast from any city in the UK, if you drive towards the nearest coast, where I'm from takes the longest. It would take 2 hours minimum, which is in the scheme of America tiny, but that's how small as a country we are.
But I think
that's the furthest you have to go to get to water.
But that still, I think, is enough to feel like yes, we're technically on an island, but it doesn't feel like when you think of an island,
movie island.
Yeah. You know,
I'm far enough from water right now that I'm like, I'm not on an island. I'm on a big, massive chunk of land.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I brought it up.
This is because Matt lives in a place that is connected to multiple countries. Isn't what it feels like to.
But Vegas is an island. Just we're not surrounded by sea. We're surrounded by flipping
desert,
dirt, and it sucks.
And tremors.
The closest city to us is 3 hours in any direction.
I saw someone ask on Twitter if the new Dune movie is just a big budget version of Tremors, and it made me laugh.
I mean,
this makes sense why our friend Dan loved it.
They both share some giant worms.
They do. I don't remember Kevin Bacon raiding one of them though. Just putting that out there.
There's always time for another Tremors movie.
16.
So yes, we're actually done with the Superman book anyway, more or less. When we spiraled off into island talk.
Cool.
What are you giving it, Matt?
I'm gonna give this 7.5, mostly because while I enjoyed all the words, I'm not a fan of that art. So it would be a lot higher if not for the art.
Okay, Connor.
So I'm gonna give it an 8. I think I did enjoy it quite a lot. I didn't have as much of a problem with the art as my. I'm not gonna say it's great or anything, but I thought it was fine.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably go with 8 as well. I think this, unlike some other Taylor books, didn't start off like at amazing level. It kind of just started off like, okay, there's promise here, and like we'll see how it builds. I think as it's went on, it's done a good job of sort of building what the mantra of the book is, and I think now that Superman's actually gone, I think it's going to benefit from really letting John have to I think him going to see his dad a few times throughout the book in the early few issues I wouldn't say it hurt it per se, but it did mean we were still kind of just dealing with the build up to him eventually being on his own as Superman. So now that we're actually there, and he's making these leaps by going and speaking to a leader of a foreign nation, who is a villain, I think those big steps are starting to feel kind of a big deal and important. So, that's starting to click. I think the art wasn't too bad, but there is definitely some problems with it. And it's not as good as the regular art. So I hope Tim's is back soon. But
me too.
Yeah, so I'll say 8 out of 10 for me as well. All right, cool. Green Lantern, issue 7, Geoffrey Thorne, writing with Tom Raney and Marco Santucci on the art. I'll keep this one fairly brief. I don't have a whole bunch to say. It's probably the weakest issue of this yet, which is a bit annoying. Because, you know, it typically averages for me around a 7, so it's never like it's super high up in my ranking anyway. So it being a little bit of a weak issue, particularly the first half, which is... So it's John on his way... Because I was actually quite into the cliffhanger from this story from last issue, which was, Kilowog's in trouble, John's going to assemble a team and go and save him. We don't get that this issue. We might get it next issue.
Kilowog's on the cover. I was not gifted any Kilowog. Instead, I got New God.
Yeah, we get this weird, like, so there's a New God character who's like, hey, John Stewart, you must see this important thing from history. And it's basically the first time the Guardians, who weren't Guardians yet, and they even point out that they don't know what that word means yet.
Malthusians.
Yes. Yeah. And they interact with the New Gods and like, you know, characters from Apocalypse, and it's like this is like predating the New Gods that we know, you know, in name. They're kind of like previous versions.
Yeah. So Highfather is known as his what is it, Isaiah, very biblical.
Isaiah, then, I imagine then.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you got, you know, Darkseid running around as Uaxis or Uxus.
Yeah. And he doesn't have Omega rays from his eyes, but he's got like pistols that he can fire like Omega style.
Does that make these the new gods?
Huh?
Are they the new gods then?
No, they're the old New Gods. This is who they were before they were new. So they're just gods.
Right. So that's just them as gods before they were new gods. Yes. So my problem with this is that it's mostly this big battle scene, and it basically plays out with John repeatedly saying, "No, this is impossible. It couldn't have happened." And all I kept thinking was, "Why? why couldn't this have happened?"
It's not just that. It's this new god that took him back there is the god of journeys, and that John, he says that this has always happened. So John Stewart, you have to go, and you have to see this. He's like, I don't want to see this. What do I need to see this for? He's like, but you need to see it. And I was like, okay. It's a little bit philosophical. I get it. But...
Yeah, this was a tedious first half of the issue that just like, you know, they're throwing around all these names. They're calling characters things that I'm not used to them being called. You know, the only interesting moment is when John Stewart actually kind of intervenes and punches young Darkseid a bit. Yeah. And he sort of, because at first he's like, you know, they can't see him. They're kind of there in sort of a cloaked way. But John Stewart breaks out of that to go punch Darkseid. And he refers to, you know, the Guardians and like young Ganthet, who's like, you know, like a tall, handsome version of Ganthet is like, what? Guardians? What do you speak of, strange being? But then he just sort of snaps back to present day. And they're still on their way. And I'm sure like there'll be some relevance to this later down the line, but this was not an enjoyable like story to read, this flashback.
It's always murky when they mix the New Gods with the Green Lanterns, and I get it because you want to play with the whole cosmic stuff, and you know the New Gods fit well with all the cosmic. I've yet to read a New Gods story outside of the Tom King, Doc Shaner, God of Light story that really pulled it off. But yeah, this one's just weird. Like you summed it up right, Pete. Where it was just like, what exactly is going on?
Yeah.
What was the point of this?
Yeah, and I just, you know, I kept coming back to John being, no, this is impossible. It couldn't have happened. I'm like, why? What about this? Like, what about the history of Green Lantern says that this could, no, the Guardians could never have interacted with New Gods before?
It seems like the Guardians, everyone they meet early, they're just dicks to, and it makes it so. This, of course, like John, you should know this by now. I did like the one thing I did like was that the Guardians are using all different color spectrum, right? Like when they're blasting the New Gods and whatnot, you see a violet, you see a red, you see a yellow, in addition to the green, which I think is nice because, you know, it has been established in Green Lantern mythos that they did at one point have access to all of the, you know.
It's a nice detail. It doesn't really help the story, but it's a nice detail.
No, but it's I'm looking for positives here.
Yeah.
So, you know, I did like that little touch.
I'll give you that, but that's basically all I've got to say on that. So, the back
half a little bit better.
Yeah, back half's better. You know, it's continuing the Joe. Kelly's passed out and been transferred back from what do you call it? Corrigar. And or New Corrigar. Are we on New Corrigar now? Yeah. So, and basically the Thanagarian from the United Planets is like, you know, we need to deal with this girl because the power's too much, and obviously Joe and Simon are like, the hell you will. And Joe's like, no, we'll take I'll take responsibility for her. Like, we'll look after her now. And that's basically it. And then the aliens who are looking after her in like the med bay try to take her gauntlet off. And immediately Simon and Joe freak out because they know what that's going to cause, and immediately all these constructs start attacking the station because it's got like a built-in, like almost like subconscious defense mechanism for Kelly, where, and I like that it made the Titans, you know, you see like green constructs of Robin and Jenny Hex
Superboy,
and all that. Yeah. You know,
I like that.
It was a nice touch. So they sort of fight their way through this. It's a little bit fillery in the sense that there's just a lot of fighting these constructs, but
I do like that we get Simon and Joe interacting, and they were talking about Jess. And that type of stuff. Yeah,
and Joe's not met her yet, so she's like, "Wait, the other Earth Latin chick? What was she doing with the yellows? What's going on?"
Yeah, so I did like all that, and I do like that Thorne is building up that relationship between Kelly and
Simon.
So
there's definitely like a sort of surrogate father thing, because, you know, basically the end of the issue is she's still passed out, but Simon gets to her side. He sort of walks through the constructs and holds her hand and says, "It's okay, I'm here. I'm gonna keep you safe. You know, just sleep." And it kind of stops all the chaos. Yeah. So it's got a sweet ending. I like the character stuff that it's building here in this back half. Like I say, it's not as good as some of the other stories we've had with Joe and Kelly and Simon. I think because it is a little bit like, okay, like, you know, a good like 4 or 5 pages just fighting these constructs, and, you know, so it's whatever. But
yeah, I do like that the Thanagarian keeps calling Simon the Broken Lantern, and he's about had enough. He's like, all right, enough of that Broken Lantern stuff. Like, I get it. Like,
if Simon ever gets his own ongoing, it should be called Broken Lantern. That's what it should be called.
Yeah. But yeah.
So yeah, back half is better, but it's not as good as it has been. And after a really bad first half that I thought was really uninteresting, it wasn't enough to lift it up, unfortunately. Yeah. So yeah, weak issue this month for Green Lantern, unfortunately. But there's not much to say about. You know, like, it's the exact same things I've been saying about both sides. You know, I like the Kelly Joe side with Santucci more.
Than the Raney.
The Raney, I do think stylistically is all right at times, but
this issue fit more because I feel like he was definitely leaning into Kirby's designs.
Oh, sure.
On the New Gods, like, everything was big and bulky, and just like when young Darkseid goes to put on the Omega gauntlets, it really felt like Orion's harness. You know, like there was that same design kind of there. But that said, the Santucci back half looks much better.
Yeah. All right, what are you giving the issue, Matt?
5.5.
That's exactly what I was going to say. 5.5.
Damn.
Just over that midline, because the back half is better, but like I can't go any higher because the first half I just didn't like at all.
Yep.
So cool. That was Green Lantern. Moving on. Catwoman, Lonely City, issue 1. Cliff Chang, both writing and doing art on this issue. So this is one of these Black Label Prestige books. It is a 50-pager, and it is its own continuity. It is a Catwoman. It's an old lady Selina, if you want to call it that. Yeah. Where she's out of prison after 10 years, and Harvey Dent, Two-Face, who's kind of reformed and has become the mayor of Gotham. Selina is kind of treated like a, you know, this has-been criminal. No one kind of takes her seriously. But she is looking into something. You know, it's teased that everyone kind of blames her for the death of Batman and Dick Grayson 10 years prior. That's why she's in prison. And we'll get into it, but like that's the basic setup of the world that we're in. But there's a lot of her, like, you know, revisiting her old place, walking through the city, kind of commenting how things have changed. It's, you know, it's a very focused book, and it feels like it's going to make a good trade to recommend as a complete story.
100%,
with the 3 or 4 issues that it is. I don't know how many chapters it is.
I think it's 3.
I think it's 3. Most of them seem to be 3 with another size, but yeah.
Yeah, it's because that kind of works out to roughly 6 issues, give or take, maybe just over.
Yeah, I guess the first thing to get out of the way is the art, just because it's the easy thing to talk about.
Gorgeous.
It is a very, very pretty book, and I think it works especially with the different color. You know, nighttime is blues and purples, and it's all these flat, you know, colors, flat shapes, but then you get to all the daytime stuff, and it's a lot more greens yellows and browns, and like it really kind of plays with its color palettes a lot. And whenever they're on like whenever there's a rooftop or whatever, you get like depending on if it's nighttime or daytime, you really get that backdrop, and it gives it this feeling to it. So the story starts with a sort of like it is the sort of format where it's like, okay, we start off in an action scene, and it's like now, and then we see her running from what I'll describe as bat cops. It's like armored cops with bat ears, because we're in this future.
I mean, to be fair, it's not just ears; it's like a full face thing. You know, it's got like a respirator sort of thing over the mouth, so you know it doesn't look goofy. If you say cops with bat ears, it sounds goofy.
Yeah, it looks more like, I don't know, like troopers you would get in like a sci-fi movie in like the future. They just happen to have ears in their helmets.
Yeah.
But then it's like 3 days ago, it's her being released from prison and getting out, seeing the world for the first time. She has to take the bus. There's a lot of little details dropped about how they have to have these certain types of like IDs on them. They can only pay in like G-Bucks or whatever it is. Like no one takes cash anymore.
The G-Bucks.
Yeah.
Sounds like Shroot Bucks.
A lot of office references going on today, Matt.
Yeah.
And you know she has to break into her old place because she doesn't know what the code was. But yeah, like all of her old outfits are there, and she gets geared up. One of her cats is still there, so that's gonna have a heartwarming little beat when she runs into Monty. But a lot of this is like showing that she's out of touch, that Gotham has changed so much, and she's from a previous era. And it does that thing where it uses like TV, like news stuff to fill in a lot of the surrounding mythology of the world.
It's mostly done like interviews with Harvey Dent, because the re-election is coming up.
Yeah, which I actually really, I mean, obviously it tells you a lot about how Harvey's different in the future, but what I really liked about this is that eventually later in the issue when he shows up in person, it actually felt like it's such a huge deal because we'd seen like 4 TV interviews with him up to that point. So him actually walking into a scene and actually being there felt like a big... So it did a really good job of treating that like it had a big bit of momentum with it.
Yeah.
So, I think that's really smart.
It's really interesting seeing the way Gotham's changed, because we learn that when Bruce died, he kind of basically all his money went to the city, and this is all the projects that it was earmarked to kind of fund. And crime is better than others.
Yeah, and crime is down. Things are generally better than they were before.
It seems very gentrified. Selena goes to get a coffee at Captain Cold Brew, Matt's new favorite DC location.
That's where that came from.
Yeah.
I didn't see it in any of the books that I read this week, and I was like,
Yeah, it's from this, and they're like, like $20 for a latte and a scone, and she's like, screw this, and then they won't even take cash because it's G money only. She's got to go to like some shitty little shop down the road that's like, it's $2.50. Here you go.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I wasn't sure if the joke was that this place was extortionate, or if this was just like, in 10 years inflation's gotten us to the point where, like a Starbucks in 10 years is going to be charging this.
No, I think it's gentrification combined with that they're only taking essentially the cryptocurrency. Yeah.
But she goes to Wayne Manor. She sneaks in past the guards that are outside and goes to Bruce Wayne's tombstone, then sees Alfred's, and then looks over at Dick's, and it's like, oh man, this is like a really sad version of this world. And like the guard comes in, sort of hearing something, and she gets away in time. But when he finds like roses at all of the tombstones, it's a really kind of bittersweet, nice moment. And then she goes to see the Penguin, whose iceberg lounge is like evolved into this like international waters thing that's like outside of Gotham's jurisdiction.
Yeah. It's great. He's like he runs all offshore accounts, and and he's one of those guys who does all the what is essentially money laundering.
Yeah,
but is technically legal. Right? He's a Cayman Island.
That's what she says. Is like most of what he's doing is actually completely legal. It's just all.
He's a Cayman Island essentially.
Yeah,
to himself.
Some shades of grey, perhaps.
Very, very Danny DeVito penguin, isn't it?
He's got a white tux on as well.
There it goes.
So which gives him a different look. He's got the white hair. Not that it tends to be like shown with like really nice thick hair or anything, but it's notably whiter than normal to make him look older here.
Yeah.
This is Old Man Penguin. And then skips to like a day ago, because remember we started off and it went 3 days early, so now it's just 1 day ago. And one of the key things about the conversation with Penguin was that she's like, "Hey, I'll do some jobs, loan me some money and I'll pay you back." And he's like, "You're kind of old now. Like maybe you could like put on a skimpy Catwoman outfit and like do some like table service, but I don't believe with your knees and your back that you can still do the Catwoman thing. So I'm not trusting you." And then it skips to this next part of the timeline where it's nighttime. She's not put on a Catwoman suit. She's put on basically just like a hoodie and like stuff like this. It's like the low rent version, and she's essentially just trying to prove that she can still do this by sneaking into the to Gotham Central. But she's taking like pain pills. She's like commenting on how her back hurts and her knees hurt as she's like doing certain things. And she messes up. Like she almost gets caught and has to just abandon the plan. When one of the cops comes back, like. And all of it, and she's doing like the Serenity thing with River, where she's like hiding up in the ceiling with the arms and legs spread out.
She's like, I didn't think this through. Knees are not good for this anymore.
Matt's trying to think of the scene in Serenity I'm talking about.
Matt's too busy on his phone, not listening.
I'm not, because I want to see that movie once.
Yeah, well, it's just, it's just imagine like sort of lying up with the back to the ceiling, but you're sort of holding up by your hands and legs being pressed against the walls. I
think for Matt, I think it was it not in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies?
And he's up in the back.
Well, he doesn't
in the corner.
He doesn't count though, because he got sticky fingers. He can just do that.
Doesn't matter. The imagery is the same.
But it doesn't strain him as much. This is like athletic, whereas Spider-Man is just like stick.
Well, yeah.
And I'm not saying obviously Spider-Man is very athletic in a lot of other ways, but I'm saying that particular maneuver is not athletic.
I imagine it takes a lot of upper body strength to hold yourself up by your fingertips, sticky or not.
You ever see Free Solo about the dude that climbed up the mountain without?
Yes, he's a very scary dude.
Yeah, I bet you he could do it.
Yeah, I bet he could.
Alex Honnold.
I thought that we were going to say that was like the campaign to like get the original cut of Han Solo movie released.
That's Free Solo too. Come on, Pete.
So yeah, so she kind of retreats, and it's this like downbeat moment for her. And I think that was like, I don't know if I like everything where the plot goes by the end. Some of it's just not as exciting as say Batman the Imposter from last week, which was just exceptional from start to finish.
I've not read it yet.
Make sure you do.
Do you know what I realised though? I haven't read yet either.
What? Strange Adventures?
That too, but even worse than that, I still haven't finished Infinite Frontier.
Ronnie, you're the worst.
I realised earlier when I was like,
you're the best at being the worst.
Shit, Infinite Frontier. I need to finish that at some point because I keep putting off because there's not a next issue that I need to read it before.
Yeah, but it's constantly, there's more interviews with Harvey Dent. It's constantly teasing this big night that happened where Batman died. And then
Fool's Night or something?
Yeah, and Selina goes to see Barbara. And this is a continuity where Barbara is in a wheelchair. And she's actually the opposing candidate. The re-election we keep hearing about, she's the one who's actually running against Harvey Dent. And she doesn't want to talk to Selina. Like they're not on good terms. Not at all. And like Selina's there to ask a question about was it Orpheus? What I say?
Orpheus.
Yeah. And at this point we have no idea what she's talking about. Like, did I miss this word being brought up earlier? Obviously there's context given a little bit later.
And I am going to refer to the story of Orpheus when we get a little bit later.
Sure. But yeah, so they're not in good terms. Babs talks about taking responsibility. Kind of blames Selina for what happened to some extent, and it's kind of an emotional beat. It's kind of sad. And there's a great page after that, Selina just walking through the city at night. And it's like a tracking shot in a camera. All these horizontal panels getting closer to her until the lights in the background are just the spots. They're so out of focus kind of idea. Really good pacing. And then she goes to this bar where she runs into old man killer Croc, who's wearing a little old man hat, and
like a flat cap.
Like a flat cap, yeah. And he's so excited about like maybe doing some work with Selina, and he's like, "Hey, can I have a place to stay?"
He's put on a lot of weight. It's kind of weird to see Croc like this.
It's definitely a kind of a jokey version of what Croc could turn into.
Kind of like it though.
But
and this place is run by Matt Hunkel.
Yeah.
Sweet.
But this is when Harvey shows up to talk to Selina, and kind of belittles her a little bit. Tells her to make sure she checks in with the parole officer and all that kind of stuff. And we get like a tease from Harvey in a phone call in a bit that he actually got her released from prison, presumably because he wants to use her as a ploy to make sure he gets reelected by like the Catwoman's at large and Harvey's going to stop her kind of thing, or whatever the exact tactic's going to be. But you definitely get that feeling. But basically, Selina's plan, she wants to break into the Batcave, which is heavily guarded, and she wants to do it on election day. And now, admittedly, when she says Batcave, I don't think she's speaking about the cave underneath the mansion. I think she's speaking about where the current like Bat police force is operating out of. I could be wrong on this.
It's left unclear intentionally. I think that I don't know which one they're gonna play it with.
Yeah. But they're tied to election day, so it does feel like the story is all building to like this one big, boiling point. And then we finally get back to the present day stuff, which is her on the rooftop in costume, running from the Bat Cops, and some great panels of her running past the moon and all that.
That one full page, where she's cut the smoke down, so the Bat Cops are shooting just nowhere near her, and she's just off running on the ledge with the moon. It's like a full page splash. Oh, absolutely gorgeous.
There's a lot of like. What's funny is the narration more than anything made me think of Batman Year One a little bit. There's a lot of her being mad at herself and saying she's getting lucky reminds me a lot of Batman Year One, because that's a lot of what Bruce's narration is in that. So I kind of dug that. It's a way to kind of bookend things, but but this is her breaking back into Gotham Central. This is her like proving to herself she can do it, and she does. And she's there to get into the evidence room. She takes a box of evidence, and then when she looks through it on a rooftop, she goes through it. And which, by the way, actually on the word rooftop, I did kind of like earlier on Babs used that word. She says, you and him. I always asked him, why you? Like, after all this time, why you? Actually, no, I'm thinking of Batman Catwoman. That was a conversation in that book.
There is there's still, she uses rooftops very derivatively here.
Yeah, but the way she uses rooftops and the way the word rooftops is bolded, it does kind of feel like Tom King, through all that rooftops talk and his Batman run, has turned it into a thing. It's turned it into a term that can be used to talk about their romance, is them on rooftops, which I kind of like, actually. It's
at
like
least for now, while it's fresh enough. Maybe in 5-10 years time that'll have faded, but right now it's shorthand. We all know what it means.
Yeah, so it's neat. But she's looking through this evidence box and she finds what looks like a Batarang in there, as well as other items that she doesn't need. But this is a Batarang that Batman handed to her as he was dying. We get a flashback to Fool's Night, and he says, as he's dying, he says, "Cave, bring me the Orpheus." And he kind of dies before he can really tell her what it is. He just says, "Save the city," and hands her this Batarang, which I'm going to assume is maybe some sort of key. And maybe this implies that it is just the actual Batcave that she's going to break into. It's just to get to that.
Clearly important, at least she thinks it is. Maybe the trick will be in the end it's not actually that important, but right now she believes it is.
What's funny is I'm thinking about what could this be, that when she finally gets to it in the final issue, like something that Batman intended. Maybe because Batman knows he's dying, and this was always the post Batman world that he like not like a dead man's switch, but like in a bad way, but like in a good way, where he always planned for something to happen after his death. Maybe that's what Orpheus is.
Yeah. But, which right now, seemingly, the plan after he died was, here's all the money to the city, right?
Possibly, yeah.
What if there's something else?
So, very, very curious in what it's setting up. Police helicopter shows up though and shoots at her. It ends up setting off all these explosives that were rigged by the villains. And that's what actually kills Batman. And possibly others. But there's a sweet scene at the end where Babs gets a present from Selina, and it's just a box that contains her father's pipe, because Gordon is dead as well. Presumably died in the same night over the same event as everyone else. Yeah. Hence why it was in the same evidence box, you'd presume. And Babs just kind of like gasps at it, and it's kind of a sweet moment. And yeah, it's basically the end of the issue. The final page is just to tease that Two-Face is kind of behind this and is wanting Selina to help him get re-elected. So
yeah, particularly interesting what Orpheus is. Given that the story of Orpheus is it's a fable to not look back. Essentially, it's about looking forward and keep moving on and not like looking back at the past.
So one thing you can't do, or you lose.
Exactly. Yep. And this here, the idea of balancing, Orpheus, being that's the thing. And it's like, I don't quite understand what it's going to be, but it intrigues me just based on that connection.
Yeah, I mean, I think the themes of the story so far, it kind of feels like it's going to be about Selina, obviously making amends and like clearing her name and all that, but certainly the idea that Batman maybe doesn't want there to be Bat stuff forever, and the idea that the police are using his image and all that kind of goes against maybe what he ultimately wanted, is that for them to move on in some capacity. And maybe whatever Orpheus is that she finds, maybe it is a plan or something to like destroy the image of Batman so that they can move away from it. This is definitely a very different future to what a lot of Bat future stories tend to do. This is doing a very... Fine. Yeah, it's its own thing. It's its own continuity. You can do what it wants. And it's one where it gives Selina kind of this... And it's kind of a heartwarming thing, this idea that Selina, after Bruce's death at some point, is going to have to be the one to kind of like do the final like Bat thing, like be the one who initiates the final Batman ray of hope for the city.
The idea that everyone else is either dead or kind of given up hope, like Babs has.
Yeah, because it's the one person who was on the Shades of Grey to start with, who wasn't a hero to begin with, who is the one who is now going to fight to make sure the final lasting wish of Batman is upheld. There's something sweet about that, and full of redemption and all that stuff. So, no, I enjoyed it. It was a 50-page book. I mean, it was an easy read for 50 pages. Don't get me wrong. I said the same thing about Batman the Imposter last week, but it flew in for the length that it was. Admittedly, 50-page book on a week where I was reading this many books.
But this is one of the fastest 50 pages.
Yeah. So, but I'm definitely in for issue 2. I had a good time. I definitely like the Imposter a bit more, but this is still really, really solid.
I think I am maybe glad that I haven't read The Imposter yet, because I haven't got that in my mind to compare it against. And not that I'm saying they're actually comparable books, because they don't seem to be in terms of style, but more just they're Bat family books. They're alternate, Black Label books, Prestige.
That's basically it. They're both Bat family books that are Prestige. But I mean, Batman Imposter's set in like Batman Year 3, and it's like, it's this young Batman story.
They're not really, again, from what I know, they're not really similar in story beats or anything like that, or even tone. Just on the release format, essentially, is what makes you compare them, and that they're a week apart.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of glad I haven't read that yet, so that's not in my mind. If it is as good as you're saying, because I love this. I really, and I'm a sucker for Cliff Chiang anyway. But just the tone of this and the mood and just the pacing, and obviously all the art, just grabbed me, and I'm glad I wasn't comparing it to something else as I was reading it to ruin that experience.
Yeah, I like the tone of the book. I like the kind of this feeling of sadness and looking back at what happened to everyone.
Melancholy. Yeah,
I really dug that. Which is the one big thing that does really separate it from Imposters. That's not what that feeling is in that book at all. That's a very different thing. The premise of Imposter, other than the fact that there's an imposter, is that Leslie Tompkins is like basically says, Bruce, if you don't come here for therapy every night to prove to me that you're not insane, I'm going to turn you in. And that's
she blackmails him.
Damn it, I need to read it now.
Yeah, it's a great premise.
For anyone who has watched Midnight Mass on Netflix, the new Flanagan show, the not therapy but Alcoholics Anonymous meetings where they just turn into monologues in the first couple of episodes are the best moments of that show. I loved that stuff. So damn it, especially with that fresh in my mind now, I need to read Imposter.
It's very good, and the art is
It's Sorrentino, right?
Yes. So
Yeah.
Yeah, so two great Black Label prestige books started back-to-back weeks. I really can't complain. When it's some of the best stuff, like just in terms of pure quality that is coming out of DC.
It's DC that they know what they're doing with these prestige books. They want that. This is something you can stick on your bookshelf, and we will sell copies for the next 30 years. They're smart. They know what they're doing with that, and I can't blame them because they're damn good.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been more hits than misses at this point, and there was a time when they went so long after the first couple that I thought Black Label was dead, and then here we are.
That 1 week where you were like, Black Label is dead. The following week they were like, here's your Black Label books.
Yeah, here's like 6 Black Label books coming soon. Like, oh yeah, okay, all right, fine, DC, make me look stupid. I don't think it was a dumb thing to say at the time, though. I feel like I was justified in my skepticism.
1 week later. 1 week.
I mean, there's irony there, sure, but it doesn't unjustify me.
Of little faith.
Anyway, what are you rating Catwoman?
I'm gonna give it a 9. I really love this book.
I don't think I'm gonna go quite as high. I'm gonna go 8.5, but it is excellent. It's really good. And yeah, it has been the highest rated thing I've done so far this week. So, yeah, check it out. I would recommend it. Admittedly, it was kind of weird though. This is not even the last Catwoman book, but it was weird to me that I had 3 Catwoman focused books this week. Like, it's just a weird character to have 3 books of in one day.
You can go times where there's not even a Catwoman book.
I know, but we had Catwoman, Batman Catwoman, which we're talking about next, and then also this, and I was like, damn, that's a lot of Selena Kyle in one day. But hey.
Assuming Batman Catwoman's good as well, which you can talk about that in a minute, then that's 3 pretty good Catwoman books. Yeah, that doesn't happen very often.
Well, we'll find out. Batman Catwoman issue 8, Tom King with Liam Sharp on the art in this one, because Clayman couldn't keep up, and maybe he'll be back for the last couple. I don't know at this point, but here we are.
Wait, there wasn't 4 different artists on this book?
Maybe there was another one. Hold on.
No, there wasn't. It's just Liam Sharp, Pete.
It's just Liam Sharp. Okay.
His art, and this is, I'm sure, on purpose, is all over the damn place.
I mean, I think he's probably trying to have because there's the three timelines at play, and I'm sure he's trying to make each one feel very different.
And then you get to the end, and you feel like you know which timeline's which, and then the art changes again.
Yeah, I think the weird thing about this issue is you've got the 3 timelines, but you have actually, like, one of the timelines actually goes out of order briefly.
Yeah. And
I thought that was really a weird choice, because you've had this like timeline structure for the whole thing, where we've been doing these 3 timelines, and which is hard enough to follow, month to month, and then on top of that there's been delays where you have to kind of keep track of where each of the 3 stories are, and I don't always remember, right? Because sometimes it's like, I'll read a few pages and I'm like, okay, I'm back into where this story was, but it's not something that comes to me as quickly as maybe when it's just one story I'm following in a book. But yeah, so we have the present day. I mean, when I say present, I just mean the middle tier, basically, of time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if this is a Christmas Carol, right? It's past, present, and future.
Yeah, but it was just
this is the present.
This is what I'm getting at. So, this is Phantasm and Joker working together to come and see this guy, and it turns out to be do with a kid. Now, did we know that her son seemingly isn't actually her birth son? Was that something?
No.
Yeah, that's new.
That's a new twist.
That confused me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, because I wasn't sure if I just didn't remember some big detail, or if this was just a new detail.
So did she kidnap him? Did she buy him from the family?
I would suspect maybe it wasn't her, but it was her family, because her her father and all that. From what I remember from the movie. So
right.
But yeah, so and we see in the future, Helena, Batwoman, meets Commissioner Dick, and they're talking about stuff, and then we see the past, which is Batman chasing Catwoman and demanding to know where Joker is, and all these bad things are happening. I think what this issue did kind of weird for me, where I'm starting to feel the characterization feel a little bit wonky, is that it's really kind of going out of its way to make Selena be more of an outright villain, at least to begin with.
Yeah.
And that's kind of interesting, but So the present day stuff, this is where we're talking about how it jumps ahead, because it goes back to like Joker and Phantasm talking to the family, but we actually jump ahead to the father of the family, who's the only one left, standing on the edge of a bridge, and Batman and Catwoman come up to him, and Joker's basically left him there with his throat slit, but alive enough to deliver a message, which is just to tell him a joke. What did Santa do when he fell down the chimney and landed on his head? He went, oh, 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 so it's ho, ho, ho backwards, basically.
Right.
And then he falls to his death, and Selina just kind of yawns as Batman jumps to try and save him, and it doesn't work. And old woman Selina's like going to see the Joker's body because Dick's had it brought to Gotham, and so there's all these things going on, and I have at times quite enjoyed a lot of what this book has done. I thought this issue in particular though was a little bit on the messier side, and the characterization was feeling a little bit more mean-spirited, and I wasn't really sure what to take from it.
That's not the dad.
Is it not?
No, the dad has dark hair and a dark beard. This guy is a ginger.
All right.
Because you kind of confused me on that, because I read this, one of the first things I read.
I'll be honest, I saw that.
It's not the dad, but it's the glasses.
Well, it's the glasses and the goatee. Like I saw the goatee and the glasses, and I thought it was the same dude.
Yeah. And also, Selina's dressed in the animated series, so that's in the past.
Was that in the past? Oh,
that's in the past, because she's in the gray suit.
Well, here we go. Case in point, I confused this entire scene as being the wrong timeline.
Yeah. Well, that's when you said about the timeline. I was like, did I miss something? Where you said it kind of jumped around? Because he has been a little bit cleaner, but I put that on Sharp's art because it's not as clear. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like he's trying different things out. Like, he's experimenting here. Because I would never say the art's bad. It's just, it feels off in places. Like that one right there. Like, that art doesn't seem to match the other past art, So, anyway.
Yeah. So, basically, Phantasm demands to know, like, because because they've got a little boy, and like, this son's not your first child, and like the mum's like, how did you know that? And basically, it sounds like their baby just went missing at the hospital, right? Which makes you think that someone got paid to like steal a baby, to give to Andrea, and basically, once this is revealed and sort of admitted to a certain point, you basically, Phantasm takes off her mask, says who she is, and says, like, basically says she knew, like, your brother, right? My son was your brother, or your brother was my son, or something to that effect. And Joker then immediately kills her, right? Towards the end of the issue, he just strangles Phantasm and kills her.
Well,
and
he's strangling her. I'm sure she's gonna be able to fight, but she is the Phantasm.
Oh, true. Okay, yeah, true. She's not technically dead yet. She's still struggling when they get the cliffhanger. That's true.
Yeah.
So this turn of events was kind of weird because like the end of the last issue, which I don't remember all that well, admittedly. I remember Phantasm agreeing to do something with the Joker, but I couldn't really remember what. So I was kind of murky as to what they were here for, like the entire time. And then I didn't realize that the baby came from somewhere else. So I was like, oh, wait, what? I had kind of just a confusing experience reading that story, where I never really felt solidified. Obviously, there's the tie-in in the future. Basically, there's a crime scene, a tree, where the Joker's body parts have been put all up this Christmas tree. And there was a note found at the scene that just said, oh, 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 which references back to the joke. So clearly this is old lady Selina who's done this.
Yeah.
So
she's about snapped. Yeah. Also, does Helena calls Dick Uncle Dick, which does not ring true to me, because that wouldn't be Bruce's brother. That's like her brother.
I kind of get it in the sense that Dick's already an adult before she's even born. So
I think it's more just like how some people have like family friends that are like
uncles, or even
but I just,
if your age difference with a cousin is big enough, you might refer to them as an uncle or an auntie because they're already an adult. So you just kind of think of them that way rather than cousins.
You would just think that you know, that with the amount of times Bruce has called Dick his son, they would have more of a older brother, younger sister versus uncle. You know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know. It's just that one little thing.
I'm obviously not reading this. I'm not 100% of the timeline, but I would assume that Dick is like almost old enough to be the father himself rather than a brother, right?
Yeah, that's an age thing for sure.
You know, like, I don't know, like if there's a big age difference in brothers and sisters, you know, like that's still your dad's other kid. And it's just a weird thing for me. Like, it doesn't matter at all. It was just you know, her just throwing that out there, calling him Uncle Dick. And him, I did like that he has Gordon's pipe, and he talked about how Gordon was smoking up to his deathbed, you know, and then when they see the stuff in the tree, he goes, "Okay, can I have my pipe back now?" Because Helena took it from him.
What I think's frustrating me about this series a little bit with this issue in particular is that I feel like with the other great Tom King books that we've been dissecting, you know, with Rorschach and Strange Adventures, is that there was a sense of, okay, we know what the clear themes of this story are, and we have a sense of where it's. We don't necessarily know what the outcome is, but we have a sense of like what questions are going to be asked as we go into the climax and stuff. And particularly with the future stuff with Selina, who seems to just be going insane. I don't know, like, her putting on this display with Joker's body is just like complete like psychopath levels, and I'm like, is this going to be another one like almost Heroes in Crisis where I'm just going to be annoyed that, and it doesn't really matter because it's like out of continuity, so it's not like a big deal, but is it just going to be like this unsatisfying story about her going nuts? Is that the point of this? And if it is the point of this, I don't know if this story up until this point has set me up for that, if that is where it's going,
because she doesn't have any vibe with that from where we've seen her up until now.
Yeah, but because the stuff in the flashback, like, like, you know, the early timeline, everything up until now, yeah, she was this kind of villain character who was starting to question like being around characters like the Joker, and a lot of the later timelines was her thinking back in that and thinking about the world she used to be in, and before she kind of went more with Batman and turned over a bit of a new leaf. And I felt like this issue, she was acting far more like a sociopath, and those, like, because she gets really mad at Batman in this issue. She's like, "Oh, you just want to know where the Joker is," and Batman's like, "He's literally killing people. He's going to poison children. Like, give me some information so I can help." And she's like, you know, I'm just a tool. I'm just your cat. I'm your bat cat. I mean, that line was a bit awkward as well, actually.
Big time.
I was not a fan of that, but it just kind of felt like she's actively being kind of like nonchalant about the people she hangs around, and then she goes to Joker and gets drunk, and she's like, he's always complaining about me hanging around with you and you killing a bunch of people, and like, why is she so like sociopathic?
Why does she want to hang around with the Joker?
Yeah,
that's the main question.
Like, early on in the series, it felt like it was examining the fact that she did hang around with the Joker and like what that's done to her mentally, and maybe that's still part of it, but now it's starting to feel like they're really painting her in a much worse light than she was before.
Because you see in the pages that when Joker's putting on the Santa suit, his eyes have these weird red like spirals to them, and it's almost like she's seeing him differently, you know. And the art changes, and it's another one of those things. But I don't know what that's trying to say with that. If this is issue 8 out of 12, this is the second act break, and it feels like, unfulfilling if the second act break. If
this is the point in the story where, like, in the past, Selina is going to really start to sort of like question that she's around the Joker, that'd be fine. But that's not what the flashback story or the past timeline in this issue didn't accomplish that for me. The past in this timeline in this issue accomplished me thinking Selina's a sociopath. Like, it made her unlikable in this issue. So I'm not sure where this is going exactly. And maybe this will all click together. It's possible it might. I mean, if the whole point of it is to examine the idea that Joker has been in her head, and it's kind of almost like a longer, drawn-out Harley Quinn thing. We're not just she falls in love with him, but more that being around the Joker has caused her to go kind of insane. Like,
madness. Yeah,
there's something to that. I don't think that's a bad idea, but it's a bit murky at this point in the story. So, you know, I'm curious to see what they do next with this. But this was definitely one of the weaker issues for this.
Definitely.
Maybe even probably the weakest thus far, because this is the only one that I've come out at the end going, you know what, they're not all been like blow away hits by any means, but this is the first one where I came out of it going, I think I just kind of was annoyed by that as opposed to liking it.
I guess it was only 2 out of 3 Catwoman books this weekend.
Instead of making Connor read Harley, they should make him read this.
Oh, please don't.
From the start. Well, what's funny is that the patron who was making Connor read Harley stopped making him read books this month, right? That last month was the last month. But David, who didn't have anything for him, basically said, "Oh, if no one's making him read Harley, I'll make him read Harley still." So David stepped in to ensure that Connor will have to continue reading Harley Quinn.
He's evil.
He is a little bit evil at times.
I'm glad he changed it because I was like, all right, I'll read, because he told me something else to read first. I was like, all right, fine, I'll get to that, 10 minutes before we start recording.
Cool.
I'm glad he changed his mind before, because I didn't want to read both.
Yeah. I like how Matt was trying to force you along in the middle of the story. Like, you clearly weren't finished with the anecdote.
No, because I just remembered he has a Patreon book to do now, and I want to get done. I'm starving.
I'm also very hungry.
Yeah, all right. Okay. What are you rating this, Matt?
This is a 6.
Yeah, I'll say 6. Yeah, I'll say 6. I'll put it a notch above Green Lantern. All right. Refrigerator Full of Heads, issue 1.
Short. Yeah.
This is real. What?
Good.
It's the intro to the book, Matt. You know I'm going to say something. It's like the most obvious time to be quiet.
I have not eaten since 11 o'clock my time. Okay, I'm dying here. So
3 hours ago.
I'm running on fumes. All right, the caffeine has run through. I apologize.
All right. Refrigerator Full of Heads, issue 1. Real Yours writing with Tom Fowler on the art. And this is set a few years, because I don't remember when in the 70s, but it was the 70s, the first book. Was it?
No, so apparently, according to this one, the first book took place in the early 80s.
It does.
This one takes place in 84, and they talk about the summer before.
Well, yeah, but that's the
events of the first book.
Yeah, there's a prologue scene at the start, which is the year before, but that's not the first book.
No. But go in there. They talk about the sheriff on the boat, and he died in a boat fire last 4th of July.
Does it say last? I don't remember it saying last 4th of July.
It does.
When we get to that page, I'll dispute you if it says otherwise, but for now, I'll agree with you.
Hold it right now.
So it starts off with this scene a year prior, which is November 1983, and it's basically another collector of artifacts is being robbed by these vicious gang of thieves who demand this dagger that's got this engraving, and it's said to basically, if you stab someone with it, keep them alive, so they'll just feel the pain in this like constant state of
so it's
shock.
It's based off the legend of Fenrir, who gets bound and can't move, who's the giant wolf that attacks after during Ragnarok. I think he takes out Odin.
He does. He's Odin's death. That's why Odin is terrified of him and why he ties him up in the first place.
Right.
Yeah. So
prophecy and all that.
This family is just traumatized. It's like a couple and like their like teenage kids or whoever, and immediately the villain, this main woman, just sort of says, "Well, let's try it out," and just like stabs the old man with it. And it seems to work. He's like lying there in a bloody pool, but he's still kind of awake. He can still kind of like move his hand a little bit, but that's it. And then they just murder the whole family, and like not with the sword specifically, but with like just like blowing them away with shotguns. And like it has this brutal scene where you end the final page of it is just all these like 4 bodies lying in pools of blood. Like this is a massacre, not a slumber party massacre, but a massacre.
No.
So you get a scene of the police there, and like the guy who's still technically alive in pain because that's what the dagger does to him, has managed to write something in blood, like a symbol, to sort of give the police like a clue to follow. Right. So like, okay, we have to.
So this house is in California, right?
Yes.
Which is far from Maine, where the last story took place. And this house has a similar collection to what the sheriff had, too. So there's all this Viking stuff around them, swords, shields. And the people that are stealing it are very up on their Norse mythology. It looks like they have Norse tattoos. So yeah, so then.
Oh yeah,
so
they know their stuff. Whoever they are, they're clearly gunning for this particular item.
The father here that got stabbed before he couldn't, move anymore. He left a mark which is one of the tattoos on one of the guys. That's why I brought all that up. We'll see later. Yeah.
So then it comes to now, which is July 1984, and we're back in Maine. We're back in the same town, Rhode Island. And if you thought, just before we get into the characters here, if you thought the parallels and the winks and nods to Jaws were heavy in the first book, oh boy.
This is 40 years ago, unsubtle.
So we find out quite early on that there's actually a shark in the water, and because of that all the beaches are closed, and they've been closed for like most of the summer at this point, because they can't do anything about it.
A conniption fit about it,
In fact, and the couple we meet, they're driving, they have to like turn on Shaw Road as well, so just
yeah. So on that next page, it's where they're describing the shark and whatnot. That's where it said, used to be nothing much just happened on Rhode Island, but just last year, our chief of police, Wade Clausen, a damn good man, was killed in a boat fire and his wife was arrested.
Fair enough, it was last year. All right.
Yep. I know what I read. Yeah.
I'm sorry I doubted you. Matt is salty when he's hungry. Jesus.
Yeah, I'm cranky. Nobody likes me when I'm cranky. So... anyway,
the audience probably loves it. So they're basically, this old couple are introducing them to this like lake house that they've rented for the week or whatever it is, or the summer. And the woman's a writer. She's going to be finishing her book. The guy says he's a cheerleader. I don't know if he's just joking though. I think he's implying that he roots on his wife, and he does all the other work.
That's definitely what he's saying. Because they go, she's here to write, and he goes, "What do you do?" "I'm a cheerleader." He has some secret skills, because we'll see that in a minute.
Well, yeah, there's actually like a twist almost to these characters when they're looking for stuff in the water and whatnot. But well, not even just that. Before that, they go to this biker bar, and the guy for some reason is noting down all the license plates to the bikes.
Yeah.
And one of these bikers like notices them and like grabs the pad and starts beating them up, and he ends up like running like over traffic and like skidding. He fights like them a little bit. He basically
knocks the big biker down. He
effectively it's a Jason Bourne scene.
Yeah.
He gets into a fight and runs and like gets away, and he ends up jumping in the water, and he sees something glowing in the water, which brings him back out there with his wife later on a boat, which is very Jaws because they're in a boat, late at night or early morning in the water. And what did he see glowing? He saw the axe, which is still sitting down there from the last story, which makes a lot of sense. And they bring the axe up, and then they straight up get attacked by the shark. Now, as much as I've been kind of, I've been kind of making fun of it a little bit for the heavy Jaws referencing, it did make me smile when they mentioned it, because it was so kind of like in your face that they're just doing Jaws references that blatant. It's all worth it because of where it goes. So they straight up kind of do a couple of Jaws moments where, like, this the scene from Jaws where Shaw's kind of like lying on the boat and the shark's chomping at him. They kind of do that with the wife, who doesn't get her legs bitten off, but effectively one of them grabs the axe and chops off the shark's head. But if you remember from the first story, ladies and gentlemen, what happens when a head gets chopped off with that special axe? The head stays alive. So you see like the bloody stump of the rest of the shark fall into the water, and this chomping head is still just there, and they end up having to chain it up and stay away from it because it's just chomping shark head.
Yeah, credit to the artist for writing all the chomps in there.
Oh yeah.
It completely takes over, and it's
because I imagine the sound of this would be constant. It's just like chomp 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 chomp, like trying to like bite stuff. Do you know what? This made it all work. This justified them having the shark.
Yeah, so I felt a lot of as I was reading this, like you did, where I'm like, all right, they're really going over the jaw, saying this writer doesn't have Joe Hill's like sense of just add little breadcrumbs in there, and if you pick up on it, cool. I was talking to a friend on Twitter about this who didn't know if they wanted to read it, and I was like, so if the first volume, if Basket Full of Heads is like a really fun, like low budget movie, then this is the sequel that's not nearly up to level, but it's still going to be fun. I just feel, like it's just a little bit off. I'm here for this ride.
Yeah, I'm intrigued because obviously these two characters are like, you definitely get the feeling that they're investigating something because he was taking down the license plates. That the writing's a cover story.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see where that goes.
When he dropped the biker with a punch, and then runs across traffic, scrambles, and then the fact like they got a house that has a boat specifically for them to take it out, and that's where they point out the refrigerator that's on the boat. That's gonna come in handy, and there's definitely something more to these guys.
Yeah, I think the fridge is in the boathouse, not on the boat itself. If I remember right.
It was on the boat. Oh, let me look.
I don't think it makes much of a difference, really, but
no, but it was just very,
yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously it's going to get filled of heads. Maybe not the shark's head. The shark's head's too big, but
no, yeah, it's hanging up. It says even a refrigerator. It's an oldie from the 1950s, I think, but it'll keep your beer and bait cold.
Ah, there you go. Okay.
So, yeah. No, this was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. Like, as much as I was kind of like, rolling my eyes at how overt the Jaws references were, it did make me laugh, just like how blatant it was, and talking about the beaches being closed, and I was like, okay, I'm kind of interested. And the characters were kind of getting intriguing because they were clearly had skills that they weren't implying before. So it's like, oh, are they here? They're looking for the axe specifically. It doesn't feel like it. It feels like the axe is a happenstance. Because they're surprised what happens. They're surprised that the shark's head's still chomping. They don't understand it. So,
right. Because they don't know. But I also like that the dagger seems to have the same markings as the axe, and I wonder what else is out there if that's what brought these bikers to Brody Island. Is that they're trying to recover? Because if that guy that they killed had the same type of collection as the police chief, what else is out there that they've already collected?
Yeah, so I mean, is it as simple as they are police hunting down whoever stole that dagger? That feels maybe a bit too obvious, but I mean, that'd be fine if that's what it was. But there's a little bit of mystery. There's some fun kind of stuff. Like also some time period stuff. He was wearing a Frankie says relax shirt.
Says relax.
Yeah. And at one point he says Frankie says jump before he jumps in the water when he's trying to get away from the biker gang. So there's a couple of little time period nuggets like that.
Yeah.
Was there not one of those shirts in the first book?
There may have been. I don't remember.
Yeah, there could have been, but that definitely had more of a 70s vibe when
deja vu moment of talking about that exact thing.
When it said the summer before, I was shocked because it definitely had a late 70s vibe to it. So the fact that it was early 80s was a little bit more shocking, but if it was supposed to be in the 80s, I don't, that would be very much in place.
I wonder if the 70s vibe is just because it was referencing Jaws so much that
could be,
and that that's mid 70s, so maybe that's just what the correlation is. Yeah, I'm definitely in for more fridge full of heads. So, or refrigerator full of heads. Sorry, I never say refrigerator.
No one.
It's a fridge full of heads.
Yeah, the fridge full of heads.
Or as I've been calling it all day in my mind, bucket full of heads. Don't ask me why. They're not. Those words aren't close. But sitting down to read this today, I was like, it's ever refrigerator full of heads.
Well, it could be a makeshift fridge.
Yeah.
Stick a bunch of ice in it.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. At least if you said freezer full of heads, I'd understand. Yeah. All those living heads probably wouldn't enjoy it very much, but what do you think of the art? I mean, we mentioned all the sound effect chomps from the artist, which was fun.
Art's solid. Like it feels very much in line with Leo Max, but you can tell it's definitely inspired from that. Like they borrowed the style guide, if you will.
Yeah. But
it's distinct of its own. I don't think it's as good as Leo Max. It's not as refined, but it's decent.
I think it works well enough in the sense that, I talked about how the massacre felt quite gnarly. All the stuff with the shark and its head cut off felt really fun. Like, it kind of nailed what it was supposed to feel like every single scene in the book. I never felt like the art was detracting or not helping get across what the tone of the scene was supposed to be and how I was supposed to feel as a reader. So, and I think that's a pretty big compliment. It just doesn't feel like one, because it's not specific details that I'm talking about. But, I do mean that as a really big compliment. So, All right, Matt, what are you giving Refrigerator Full of Heads issue 1?
I'm gonna give it 7.5.
Yeah, I'm happy to give it an 8. I think I had a good bit of fun with this. So, and I think it's refreshing as well because you read 4 Fear State books, 3 Catwoman books. It was just nice to have. Oh, here's a story about a shark's head getting cut off. There's a refreshing vibe to it. So, I'll take that. All right, so the gauntlet is almost over, but Connor does have a Patreon book every month on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Our patrons at a certain tier and up, one of the higher tiers, obviously, get to make myself or Connor read a book, and Connor is going to discuss Undiscovered Country issue 14.
Yes, I am. It is I'm assuming the exact same creative team as the entire book because it's creator owned, which is Snyder and Soul writing with Giuseppe Camicoli and Leonardo Grassi on art. Which, yeah, it is. Just thought I'd throw that in there. We sometimes forget on the Patreon books, and that's not really fair to them. It's a pretty straightforward issue, this one, actually. We're in the land of possibility, as we talked about last time. And the way through is to create an American masterpiece. And there's a lot of debate as to what that means. Does it have to be something made in America? Does it have to be explicitly about America? Could it be the American experience? Does it have to be made by an American? Are they going to be able to do it with the group they've got here? And that's probably about like half the issue is kind of debating, what could it be? What can they make? What skills do the group have? Like none of them are really competent for the most part. None of them are really competent writers or artists or musicians or anything like that. So they're a little stumped as how they're going to manage. But that's because Val, the journalist, is off separated. She washed up last time on the superhero island because all the superheroes are basically all the great American creations exist in this realm. So there's the island of superheroes, and it becomes kind of clear over the issue that Val is going to be the one to come up with the masterpiece. So she's there, and all these they kind of malfunctioned a bit. It turns out they're like robots, or as they're described later, zombie robots that are a bit malfunctioned. They're kind of off their loop. They're kind of all like, "We have to save you. You are the damsel in distress." But all of the different heroes, you got like a pseudo makeshift Justice League. All of them are arguing that I should be the one to save you, and I should be the one to save you, and they kind of like start fighting amongst themselves and putting her in danger so that they can save her. It's a whole thing. But then there's some more flashbacks to her childhood, growing up reading comics and enjoying those. And it comes down to ultimately, the way she kind of beats them. And the others kind of get a message to figure out where she is from her little drone. Sam's like, "Oh, that's the, I recognize that place. That's the universes." And they're like, "Oh yeah, the universe. That'll narrow it down." And he's like, "No, the universes. It's the place where all the extended universes of characters are." It was a big fad. Yeah, exactly. A bit of a just some self-deprecating humor kind of popped in there. Was it the makers created things from those big sprawling stories that never ended. The folks in the fancy costumes with the fancy powers. But the way she reasoned is when she was younger, she was very creative and created a character of her own because she read all these comics, and as many children do, they're like, "Hey, I want to be one." To the point where even when she was older, she got a tattoo on her wrist of the logo that she gave to her character. And when the guy was like, "Why do you want that? When you don't believe in, it's just nice to have the idea." But so she basically dresses up as this character, and she's like, "Oh, I'm a villain, by the way," to this League of Heroes. And they're like, "Well, what are your powers?" She's like, "Well, I got Omega level telepathy. There's no resisting it." And then they kind of just turn on each other, and they're all like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Oh, we're being mind controlled. We've been told to fight you." And obviously there is no such thing happening, but just the suggestion in this place is strong enough to do that. And she when they do kind of turn up, they're like, "Hey, we were here to rescue you." And she was like, "Yeah, I kind of got it. I didn't know if you were coming or not, so I figured something out." And they're like, "How did you do that? You told me you had mind control powers. Why would they believe you?" And she's like, "Well, kind of do. I'm a journalist. We control minds. It's kind of our job." And it's very clear that she's going to be the one to come up with the American masterpiece to get them through, bending the truth like a journalist, and the idea of journalism being not uniquely American, of course, but the idea of the American brand of journalism can be considered amongst an American masterpiece, along with the works of literature and such. Especially if you're an investigative journalist, is quite an interesting idea. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing where this arc goes, and that is honestly most of this issue is that there. But some real nice action sequences as we're going through, some little back and forth, debates as to what it means, or what the characters can do. Just again, getting a sense of this zone, this realm. What's here, how is it made? Because these underwater creation engines, which are kind of likened to 3D printers, except they can literally just create anything anyone imagines. It's a really solid issue. It's like a good 8 out of 10. And I'm gonna put Matt out of his misery now, so you can go watch the Knights.
Oh, I'm already watching right now.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, why would you expect Matt to be professional and not be watching his hockey game?
How was the goal?
What's up?
How was the goal?
It good. It had a ding around like a pinball, but it got in.
That's all that matters at the end of the day.
Well, here's the thing: the Oilers like to run a transition game, but so do the Knights. So it's gonna be back and forth.
We're still playing with like half our lines injured.
Yeah, that's fine. If the Oilers aren't ready for him, that's fine. You know what I mean? So, yep.
All right. Well, that will take us on to the final part of the show, which is our picks of the week. We pick our favorite panel / moment, favorite cover, favorite art, and rank our top 5 books. And this week has actually got enough books that top 5 is actually kind of meaningful.
Means something.
Yeah. So starting off with panel / moment, Matt, you got something for that?
Yeah, it's something from Nightwing, and it's the whole you oracleize the phones. You really thought that was a good idea? It's such a good dynamic between Dick and Babs that hard for me not to pick it.
Cool. Connor?
I'm going to go with the full page from Catwoman Lost City. What's it called?
Yeah, Lonely City.
Lonely City, that's it.
Lonely City.
Blank on the name for a second there. The full page of her running with the gunfire and the kind of like the pink sky and the moon. Just such a good image.
Yeah, I actually have to go with probably that first panel in Nightwing of Batgirl and Nightwing going through the sky, and Batgirl being mostly in silhouette, kind of that classic Batman. You can still see her face and the cowl, but the cape's just kind of become the symbol, and Nightwing swinging in front of him. I'll go with that. Cover of the week. I'll jump in first with this one. It's probably just going to be the main cover to Lonely City, but I do want to give a shout out to the variant for Nightwing, which is just the Batgirl kind of like design cover. I think it's kind of just nice. And I'll give a shout out to the main cover of Superman, Son of Kal-El as well, just because of the simplicity of just the Kent farm being blasted with something. It's just one of those things where the design's nice and simple. It's just the shot of the building, the capes in the foreground. Nice and neat. But ultimately, the Catwoman Lonely City cover, which is her doing her classic sort of jumping pose in front of the night's, sort of skyline. But behind her shadow on a building behind her is kind of making a collage of old Catwoman images.
Yeah,
it's a nice touch.
That's a gorgeous cover.
Yeah.
Which I'm just jumping because that's my cover as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to choose anything else. Nothing else even comes close. I don't think that cover for me this week.
Matt?
Mine's gonna be the Superman Son of Kal-El. I think that's a take on. There was a Superman cover back during Rebirth.
Yeah,
I felt was the Kent farm. I can't remember what number it was though, but it even had the cape in the foreground, but I think it was Superman with blue coming, so it's like a contrasting. It's just a real good cover. I like that one.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it's harkening back to some other similar Kent style or Kent farm style, covers. Cool. All right, best art of the week, Connor. You can go first.
It's Catwoman Lonely City. Cliff Chang just is absolutely on fire.
Okay. I will say. I mean, it's probably that too. I'm just scanning the rest of them to make sure that I'm not. Yeah, it's Cliff Chang. It's Cliff Chang on Catwoman Lonely City. What you got, Matt?
I got Catwoman. Just the regular. No, I didn't read the other one.
just vanilla. Catwoman vanilla.
Yep, just regular.
Yeah.
Not Batcat, just regular cat.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Definitely not Batcat. And I like Liam Sharp, but this was not his most inspired work.
It was too all over the place, I think, for Liam Sharp.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Top 5 books, Matt. You can go first.
Shoot, if I can remember. Number 1, Nightwing. Number 2, Catwoman. Number 3. Oh man, that's a lot of books. I'll say number 3, Superman, Son of Kal-El. Number 4, dang. Number 4, Refrigerator Full of Heads. Number 5, Batman, I think.
Connor?
Yeah, so Catwoman Lonely City. Then Nightwing. No, then Catwoman, then Nightwing. Then Superman, Son of Kal-El. That's 4. What am I missing? Batman. Yeah, I guess Batman comes in 5th at default.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm going Catwoman Lonely City at number 1. Number 2, Nightwing. Number 3, Refrigerator Full of Heads. Number 4, Superman, Son of Kal-El. And then number 5, The Flash. Yeah, that's my 5. So, cool. Nice varied week. Different opinions throughout. That said, there was a lot of 7s and scraping 8s. You know, there wasn't as many standout books, but that's okay. That's okay. I'll take this over a week of disappointments.
Yeah,
quite happily.
Matt's watching All About Disappointments right now.
That was the zaniest thing of zaniest. I can't even think right now.
It's just that disappointed.
Yeah.
Well,
what happened to our PK? PK used to be strong.
Not in a long time, Matt.
The PK was good.
PK.
PP.
you're right.
PP soft.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah. PP
that
soft.
was
PK
good.
strong.
I mean, if your PP is not soft, I would go to a doctor because it sounds like it's something.
Oh, the Knights PP way soft.
So,
yeah, it really is.
I mean, admittedly, I don't know if I'd describe a liquid as soft, but it's definitely not a hard thing. So
PK disappointing.
That's not like them. It's that character.
I have no idea what is being said right now, so this is time for me to tell you what's coming next week from DC Comics. So coming next week, we got Detective Comics 1044. We got Robin issue 7, Wonder Girl issue 4. I'm happy to see Wonder Girl back. It feels it's been ages. Harley Quinn issue 8. Connor.
Not next week, but we'll get to it.
Yes. Batman the Long Halloween Special issue 1. So that's kind of our special Batman.
Loeb said he wants to do more as well. Doesn't want it to leave it just this.
Oh dear. Well, we'll see how that goes. But that's our Halloween special for that coming up. Task Force Z issue 1's out next week, as is DC vs Vampires issue 1. So we get 2 really gimmicky horror DC books.
Appropriate for Halloween week.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's weird they're both coming at the same day, but I mean, I suppose if they're going to come in the same week, then
props to DC for scheduling them appropriately.
Yeah. Deathstroke Inc. issue 2 is out. Checkmate issue 5 is out. Matt, I'm sure, will force himself to read that, even though he's not really enjoying it that much.
How was Deathstroke Inc.? That's solid.
No.
I haven't checked that out yet.
That was an alright issue 1.
That's so good.
Yeah, I was into that. I mean, it's kind of like a half Birds of Prey book meets Deathstroke. It's kind of weird.
Tease Deathstroke and Canary going to space.
I'm sold.
Yeah. Wonder Woman Black and Gold issue 5, Aquaman The Becoming issue 2, Aquaman Green Arrow Deep Target issue 1 is next week, if you remember that. It was going to start. Batman Fortnite One Shot issue 1. Yeah, good luck with that. Ruby Justice League issue 7 rounds out the list. It's a healthy week. It's not as quite as overstuffed as this one is, which is nice because I got Patreon books to do.
It's still like 10 books. And Batman Long Halloween.
I'd probably be staying out of the ocean next week if I'm picking up Vampires and Task Force Z. There's a Long Halloween.
Well, I don't have 10 books. I mean, I have like 8, but I mean, I
meant assuming everyone reads their books, it's like 10.
But I mean, I'll probably not read Aquaman The Becoming 2 based on everything else.
I'm going to keep it at that because I can't do this again. This is too long. Too long. My butt's numb.
Yeah, I mean, Deep Target, I guess I'll try and try because it's an issue 1. But I can't say I'm like chomping at the bit for it. But I am looking forward to the other issue 1s though, and I'm looking forward to Wonder Girl and the Long Halloween special, and so yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff coming out next week. So cool. But yes, so that is what's coming next time. I will take this time to thank our Patreon producers for the month. So thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Short, Board Now, Al Treisman, Christopher Moy, David Brown, and Stanley.
Excelsior.
You mean Excalibur? Oh no, never mind.
No.
So
it's terrible.
So thank you to those people. But you can also, of course, support us on Patreon for as little as $1 per month. Patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, and help support all the content. At the $5 tier in particular, you get early access to the podcast by a day, give or take. So, you know, if you want to go and support and get it when it's fresh out the oven on a Saturday, very late for UK folk, kind of middling time for like Eastern, and then Pacific. For the Pacific time zone, you get it kind of early afternoon, I suppose. So I mean, for you, it's not too bad. Oh no, it's more early evening by Pacific time zone. Yeah, okay. I'm just trying to set expectations. Now I'm thinking about
it. Is this from right now?
No.
Tomorrow.
This is for tomorrow.
Oh well, then just look. We're a day early. You can put it up nice and early for everyone.
No, I'm not, because no, I don't want them trained to think it may go up that early at a regular basis. Shut up. So yes, Patreon. Check out Patreon. But you can support us for free by simply hitting the like button, subscribing, dinging the bell for notifications, and all that stuff on YouTube. If you listen to the audio version, give us a 5-star review on iTunes or Podcast Addict or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And of course, share us out on your social medias. You can find us on Twitter at DC Comics Podcast. And that about does the plugging. And I can see Matt's just like, get through all this, get through it all. It's done, Matt. I'm about to say the final lines, okay? Thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep reading DC Comics, and remember to never get lost in the Speed Force.
Pete, would you like to talk about Halloween some more?
I would love to, Connor.